Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor has called the meeting to order. Mayor Roscoe.
Present.
Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Here.
Councilmember London.
Here.
Councilmember McCormick. Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Sardinius. Councilmember Vasquez.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. Moss, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor, the next item is the invocation. Reverend Mandy Brady with St. Christopher's by the Sea Church is with us.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Evening.
So I'm going to put you all to work, if that's all right. We're going to start with a little litany of Thanksgiving. When I raise my hand, your part is we thank you, God.
Do it.
Shall we practice?
We thank you, God.
There you go. Perfect.
Thanks to God. We thank you, God.
Let us give thanks to God for all his gifts so freely bestowed upon us. For the beauty and wonder of creation and earth and sky and sea.
We thank you, God.
For all that is gracious in the lives of men and women.
We thank you, God.
For our daily food and drink, our homes and families, and our friends.
We thank you, God.
For minds to think, and hearts to love, and hands to serve.
We thank you, God.
For health and strength to work, and leisure to rest and play.
We thank you, God.
For the brave and courageous who are patient in suffering and faithful in adversity.
We thank you, God.
For all valiant seekers after truth, liberty, and justice.
We thank you, God.
Above all, we give you thanks this night for the people here gathered. Guide our deliberations and inspire our minds and our hearts, that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and a blessing to the members of this community. In your holy name we pray.
Amen. I got confused.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is brief comments by council.
Mr. Moss.
I just want to say go Heat and
All right.
go Panthers. We should be pretty happy in a sports area in Miami. So
I've been informed that longtime resident of Key Biscayne, Bill Earl, has recently passed away. So we want to pass our condolences on to his family. He's a great attorney. Great guy. And a good person that was part of everything that we've done here over the last number of years. So thank you.
The next item is public comments.
Okay. Mr. Carlos de la Cruz.
Mr. Mayor, council members, administration, I've come
Sir,
today.
Your name and address, sir. I'm sorry.
Oh, Carlos de la Cruz, 5 Harbor Point, Key Biscayne, for many years. I've come here today to talk about the idea that is circulating among the Key, different segments of the Key on what to do about raising the seawalls, and also what to do about creating a 12-foot high barrier, which is higher than the ceiling, by the way, in front of the condominiums. I think that for us to take the lead and try to get the Miami Corps of Engineers to follow our lead is not feasible. They are going to do whatever it is that they think they have to do. I also think that for us to take the lead and impress upon the insurance companies where they're going to insure and what the requirements are for insurance is also not realistic. I humbly suggest that basically the ordinance that was introduced and then pulled at the last moment should not be considered, because I think that by considering it, we're fixing a concept in the minds of many people who are uninformed and have had no contribution to devising it as to what is going to be done many, many years in the future. And I think that's a mistake, because then people are going to expect that to be the solution. And I don't think anybody knows what the solution is. It may be that we have to, the next generation of houses has to be built on stilts. It may be that the peninsulas that we have, and I'm including Mashta as a peninsula, even though it's not, maybe the idea in the peninsulas is just to let the water run over it, because they only have two houses facing each other, and to try to contain the water, which is create a bathtub in everybody's backyard, or a pool as they call it. So I think that that it's just a premature idea that requires tabling at this point, and that we should involve the members of the community to thoughtfully explain, and each area has its own set of problems. I think the bigger problems that we have here of a more immediate consequence are traffic, rainwater buildup on streets where we have flooding because of rainwater, not because of floods, not because of a hurricane. And then those are the main things. And then, of course, Bearcut Bridge. If Bearcut Bridge doesn't get fixed, all of this is for naught. So I have 4 seconds or I'm over. I'm over. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Tony Gowdy.
Tony Gowdy. I'm representing Key Biscayne Community Church, 355 Glenridge Road, Key Biscayne, Florida. Council, thank you for giving the community opportunity to express their concerns or maybe even some of their vision. A little under a year ago, our school and church decided that we wanted to do a better job of reaching into our community and outreaching into them and drawing them in. We didn't want our school to be just a place where the parents would just drop and pick up their kids. We wanted to create an atmosphere where they can hang around. We can get to know them on a deeper level. We can get to know their struggles, know their wins, know their victories, and in that, foster relationship and foster community and steward it. I think the best thing that Key Biscayne is and has always been is community. It's the idea that two are better than one. It's the idea that we're all in this together. We may disagree on things, but at the end of the day, this is a community that helps each other out. So our idea was to allow Agua Miel, which is a coffee vendor that sells coffee at our farmers market every Saturday. We asked them if they would come and service our school and the parents in our school and the children in our school, which they did. We had no idea what the zoning, what the rules were. When we spoke with Jeremy, he expressed like, hey, this is not permissible. So immediately we stopped providing that service. But unfortunately, that service was doing what we wanted it to do. It was building relationships. It was giving a family, a hardworking family, an opportunity to come to a different country without knowing anyone, like many of our stories are. Like, at least that's my mother's story, my grandparents' story. They came from a place to a place they knew nothing and were able to build a life. I don't know all the ins and the outs. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the terms. What I'm asking is if there's a way for us to get the rules changed for maybe at the very least places of worship to be able to offer this, because I think that at its foundation, any place of worship, their desire is to strengthen and build community. And in 2023, that looks different than it did when I first got to Key Biscayne. It's going to evolve in 10, 20 years from now. whatever we need to do to set the wheels in motion to possibly change the zoning laws or change the parameters in which a church can operate or a place of worship can operate, that's what we would like to do. We're willing to do the work. We're willing to take the steps necessary. We're willing to follow any law that is currently in place, which is what we're doing. But I believe, as someone who's been on Key Biscayne for almost 45 years, and I've coached many of your children, I've coached with you, I've coached against some of you, I think that the thing that makes Key Biscayne what it is that community aspect. And I think that these avenues are so great in creating that and fostering that and cultivating that and stewarding that. So as a church, I'll speak for our church, we have a heart for the people of this island and beyond, and we're going to try to reach them in as many ways as we can. It's not going to look just one way. It's going to look whatever way we can, because at the end of the day, our goal is to bring people who are far from God close to him, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to do that. So that's my time. Thank you.
Joe, can we ask a question of Jeremy right now? Yes, Jeremy, why we can't do this? Get it over with?
Okay. Let's go to the agenda now.
I thought there was 3.
Yeah, we'll have one more speaker, but that's part of the
Oh, the public hearing.
public hearing for
Okay.
the zoning item.
Thank you. The next item is the agenda. Approval, deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, withdrawals.
Okay, so I've got a couple of things. You have some?
One addition. Discuss seawall ordinance.
Seawall.
Seawall.
It's already on the agenda.
I didn't see it.
It's in the manager's report.
Moss put it on.
I put it on the agenda, but the manager said he's going to discuss it in
I
his
didn't see it
report.
there.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda, but it's in the report, so we're
No, but I
going to
want to speak
discuss
on
it then.
So
Yeah.
we will discuss it.
Yeah, I want to discuss it too.
No problem. I'm gonna pull 8C. We're withdrawing 10H. And I need to add to a reso under the mayor and council.
One moment, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Referring 10H,
10H, and then
pulling 8C,
and 8C. I'm pulling 8C.
and the last item.
Is the reso that we need to pass for the Mashta Bridge exception. And I'll talk about it when we get to.
This addition.
Why are
Yes.
we pulling 10H?
It's not
Just to
going to.
discuss it.
I'm sorry?
He wants to pull it off the consent agenda.
No, 10H is being withdrawn by the applicant.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Does a new resolution regarding Mashta Bridge?
Yes.
And do you have that so I can read the title?
I've talked with Chad. We'll deal with it at that point in time. Yes, sir.
Will you deal with the supplemental proclamation that I think wound up in your inbox?
Yes, it's here.
Okay.
We will approve it too.
Mayor, I have an item I'd like to add
The
as well.
addition, no.
I'd like to make an addition to our discussion item on resilient and infrastructure projects.
Where is that?
That would be under
6B6?
6B6.
Of the.
Of a under the mayor and council members.
Oh, okay, under the mayor and
Yeah.
council. Okay.
Yeah, it's not 6 actually. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Whatever it is.
I can't follow this.
May I request to defer the minutes to the next council meeting, please?
Moved.
Well, yeah. As part of the agenda, we'll approve that.
I was deferring it to the next council meeting.
Right, but as part of the agenda, we haven't set the agenda yet, so we'll defer.
It's part of the consent agenda, so I was just
Oh,
requesting to
part of the okay.
remove and
Well,
defer.
I'm here. It's still in the agenda, so let's. Everyone understand now what we've done?
Yep.
On the agenda. All those in favor?
Just one
say-
question. Pulling 8C, is that based on text or is it based on concept?
No, just to talk about it real quick so that,
So it's not a part of the consent agenda.
Right.
I'll read the title.
correct.
Yes. All those in favor of the agenda changes?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The
Okay.
next item,
We've got the pleasure of having our state representative here, Vicky Lopez, and our state senator, Alexis Calatayud, was going to be here, but she is on an official trip to Israel. But it is a great pleasure to introduce Vicky Lopez, who worked very hard for us this session. She's going to give a report on what happened up there.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm not going to promise I'm going to give you a report on what happened over there. We'd be here for days, and we don't have that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to give you a very brief overview, certainly with the caveat that some of this stuff really needs a lot of time to talk about, right? So I'll just start out by our appropriations. I would like to tell you that part of my success has been the success of having my legislative aide who's here with me today, Alessandro Marchesani. Ale, if you'll just stand, please. So he is at your service, as am I, and please don't hesitate to contact him if you need me or need him and my office. And of course, your government relations team that you have hired was incredibly helpful to me, so I just wanted to put that on the record. This does not get done by myself. It takes a village, and you had one. So thank you so much for that. So let's talk about the appropriations, because those are probably the most important ones. They are all subject, those that I'm going to talk to you about tonight are all subject to the governor signing the budget, which he has not yet done. It's kind of late in the process. But I think he's busy. So I'm just going to say this. My favorite one, believe it or not, is the $100,000 that we were able to get for the special needs population here on the island. It's really important to me that special needs people do not have to leave the island to get the services that they deserve and require. So this is going to be very helpful to begin the program, and it's going to be able to develop comprehensive programming for them, both youth and adults. And it's also going to be able to train the staff. So that's very exciting for me because it really impacts in many ways a particular segment of the population here on the village. The other two are what we call resiliency appropriations, equally important because this is a barrier island, so everything that you do should be resilience, 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 as we say. So I was able to obtain $450,000 for your immediate flood and mitigation. That's going to help reconstruct over 100 catch basins and regrade 1.5 miles of roadway in the most flood-prone areas. So to Carlos de la Cruz's point, that is an important issue here on the island, and hopefully this money will go a long way in helping to alleviate or at least mitigate the flooding that you are experiencing. The other, of course, is we had two hurricanes this past year, Hurricanes Ian and Nicole, and they unfortunately impacted the sand, your sand. So we were able to obtain $450,000 for sand replacement, which is, I think, super important. It's going to help to rebuild the oceanside shoreline. So we'll be hopefully back to normal. But, you know, we've entered into hurricane season, so we must be obviously cognizant that there may be an impact moving forward. So we'll continue to monitor that. I think probably the very biggest piece of legislation that I carried and had the privilege of doing so as a freshman legislator was the condo law. As you all know, 2.5 years ago, we suffered a terrific tragedy where 98 people lost their lives in Surfside when Champlain Towers collapsed in the middle of the night. And the legislature last year passed a bill. It was known as Senate Bill 4D. That was a very quick and dirty piece of legislation to get people going to ensure that the buildings were safe. That said, Miami-Dade County for the last 40 years has been doing a recertification of all buildings, commercial, residential, whether they were condos or apartment buildings. So for many, many years, I believe Miami-Dade County has been doing the right thing by trying to ascertain whether these buildings that are within our county boundaries are safe. That said, this piece of legislation that I carried, which is now known Senate Bill 154, will reduce the number of years. So they will go from a 40-year certification to a 30-year certification. You may recall that Senate Bill 4D had sort of a provision in it that if you were 3 miles from the coastline, you would have to be at 25 years. Senate Bill 154 has removed that requirement and has left that to the authorities of the local government officials to determine. So I believe from my conversations with the county that they will be recommending, the staff will be recommending to the county commission that they move to 25 years across the board. It's probably not a bad idea, given the fact that I think there's seawater going across the county, and I think that is certainly going to impact the buildings. I think an important part of that legislation is it was two-part. So there was the safety component, right, to make sure that the buildings are safe. And then there was the other component, which was really one of the reasons that Surfside collapsed. And that is not having sufficient reserves for the structural integrity components. So now the legislation has two pieces. One is the milestone inspection that will ensure that every building that's at least 30 years old will have the first milestone inspection by December 31st of 2024. So everyone will be required if you are 30 years, and that is if the county does not lessen it to 25, because I should tell you that Senate Bill 154 will be usurped by the county ordinance since it is more strict than the state law. Right, so they'll only use Senate Bill 154 as a basis, if you will. They've got to make sure they at least have that component. They can certainly go more strict, and the same will apply to Broward County. But otherwise, across the state, they'll have to comply with Senate Bill 154. And so what is important is there were a lot of people complaining that, you know, Senate Bill 4D required a licensed architect and engineer to complete that milestone inspection. And there are just not enough of them to do it in such little time. So Senate Bill 154 this year actually extends that to a team of design professionals under the guidance and jurisdiction of a licensed architect or engineer. So they're welcome to hire a general contractor or a building code officer, but they have to sign the bottom line. It's going to be their license on the line. So that's going to help alleviate the issue of we don't have enough people, what's going to happen. And clearly, if you get to December 31st of 2024 and you've already entered into a contract, but you haven't completed your milestone, that will be sufficient as well. So that's on the part of, and an important component, I think, of the milestone is that every condo owner or prospective buyer will be required to be given all the milestone reports and the structural integrity reserve studies. So no longer will a condo owner be left in the dark, if you will, as were the people who unfortunately perished in Champlain Towers. They had no idea that what was required was $9 million worth of repairs to bring that building back up to structural integrity. So, and then on the reserve side, everyone's going to be required to get a structural integrity reserve study. We have included now a certified reserve analysts or professional reserve analysts who can now do that phase one, which is a visual of the property. They will determine the useful life of 14 structural components that make a building safe. So assume for a moment that, you know, they look at the roof and they say, look, the roof's going to have a useful life of another 10 years. That's going to be $100,000 to fix or to replace. So that means that you have to be reserving $10,000 each year. Right? So that's going to be for every structural component in the law. There's 14 of them. That reserve account cannot be used for anything else because that's what's been happening. And unfortunately, we're collecting data now, but, you know, prior to the Senate Bill 4D passing, they were required to look at reserves, but they were also, they had the ability to waive reserves. And a lot of condo boards have waived. A lot of them don't have reserves for deferred repairs and maintenance, which is your normal repairs. So imagine when we get to the structural integrity, which then leads us to the problem of how much money is this going to cost and the burden on condo owners, in addition to the burden that is coming now with property insurance. So it's a big hit, and we are cognizant of it at the legislature, and myself and my Senate sponsor, Senator Jennifer Bradley, and I are committed to running another condo bill to see how we can alleviate some of that financial burden by maybe having a little bit more of a glide path, especially for retirees. So, and then the important part of my condo bill, which was because I live in a condo, was to delete. If you recall that in December when we had a special session on property insurance, they required every single policyholder, a citizen's policyholder, to have flood insurance. Well, as we all know, if you live in a condo, it would take an act of God and the destruction of the world, if you will, for my balcony on the 8th floor to ever flood. So Senate Bill 154 has now deleted that requirement for condo owners, thank God, because that was just going to be an additional cost, which didn't really do anything. So that is the condo bill. There was a golf cart legislation, and I worked very closely with your village manager on this. Representative Stevenson from the Jacksonville area, because she's on a coastal community, has a lot of people driving golf carts on county and local roads, and so she passed a bill. The current law allowed anyone that was 14 or over not to have a driver's license, right? That was the current law. She has now changed that to ensure that if a golf cart is being navigated on a county or local road, that the driver now must have at least a driver's permit. And that is 15 years with certain requirements. You can't drive them at night. So it's going to be the exact same requirements as if they were having their driver's permit in a car. So I think we had a lot of discussions on this. She really felt that safety was an issue in her community, and kids were driving these carts and creating lots of safety issues, not only for themselves, but for others. So that law did pass, and I think that that's probably an important one that impacts the island as well. And lastly, as you all know, I worked really hard on the micromobility devices here on the island. And it's very funny because just this week, a fellow representative in the Panhandle was hit by an electric bike. Today, he was in surgery most of the day, having his patella, put back together again. His kneecap is cracked. And he said, does anybody on our group text, a freshman, want to run a bill? And I perked myself up and said, I ran one, but staff killed it. And he said, come back at it again and name it after me, because he's a doctor, and he was very able and capable. And he said, it's just ridiculous, Vicki, that this is happening. And I said, come to Key Biscayne and we'll tell you just how ridiculous it is. So anyway, I think one of the things that we have to do is figure out a way. There were some lawmakers and staff that thought, if you do it for Key Biscayne, then you're going to have all these patchwork legislations, and I said, listen, I think doing one good piece of legislation will be the answer. And part of it was that the current law was actually created when the vendors came to Florida, and they put out all the bikes on the sidewalk. Well, they had to figure out what to do with them. And they gave the local governments a lot of authority to decide how much speed they should take, how many they can have, what kind of vehicles they can have. They never assumed that these would be purchased by individual people for personal use. And to be honest with you, it's not just the village. I can tell you that in Kendall, they've shown me pictures of people on the street commuting in the scooter, like one of those scooters that, where you're they're on the street. So I think at some juncture now, with Dr. Rudman having been seriously injured, I see if I can go back with him to the staff and say, maybe you made a mistake. So hopefully that's where we are. But, in the interim, we did work together, the manager and I and the mayor, with FDOT and with the county. We met with our county commissioner, Raquel Regalado, and we said, listen, we need a pilot program. We need to be able to show data, right? Because the county road is Crandon. You have jurisdiction over the local roads, but everyone's crossing the county road. And I'm seeing it all the time. I was here for Memorial Day celebration. I was watching everybody move across, young kids going across Crandon. So we really do have to impress upon FDOT. I'm meeting with our region director, Stacy Miller, in the next couple of weeks to discuss it and to see what she thinks. But we got to continue, I think, that fight because it's not just impacting the Key. So that is my report, Mr. Mayor, council members, and I'm here at your service. Please don't hesitate to call upon me when you need my help.
Thank you, Representative. Any from the dais? Any quick questions, the representative?
Just a statement of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you. Same here.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
All right.
The next item is a presentation of a proclamation for Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Yes, would the council please join me here at the podium? This is Stephanie, and she is part of the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and so it's our pleasure to present this proclamation, and it reads like this. Whereas Walk Like Mad is the signature fundraising event of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the nation's premier organization working to end drunk driving, help fight drugged driving, support victims of these violent crimes, and prevent underage drinking. And whereas almost every 90 seconds, a person is injured in a drunk driving crash, for the second consecutive year, alcohol-related deaths increased in our country, causing 13,380 fatalities in 2021, the last year that we have figures for this. Whereas MAD works tirelessly to support victims at no charge and advocates for stronger laws and create a future of no more victims. And whereas on Saturday, October 2nd, coming up later on this year, MAD will host a 2023 Walk Like Mad and Mad-Miami 5K at Billbag State Park, which is here in the village. Whereas these funds raised will continue MAD's Florida community education, victim support services, and youth programs. And whereas the Village of Key Biscayne supports MAD in reminding residents and visitors, unlike other causes, drunk driving does not need a cure. The cure is awareness and education. So therefore, I, Joe I. Rasco, Mayor of the Village of Key Biscayne, do hereby issue this proclamation and declare October 7th, 2023 as Walk Like Mad and Mad-Miami 5K Day in the Village of Key Biscayne. Representative.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a presentation of a proclamation for St. Agnes Academies. Mr. Rodrigo Raul Bustamante.
Yes, members, these two proclamations that are going to be given out at specific places. This proclamation with Rodrigo Raul Bustamante, most well known as Mr. B, who served 33 years here at St. Agnes, is a fantastic person, has impacted the lives of many, many people. So I'm going to be giving this this Friday. And then a second proclamation that the Vice Mayor is working with us on also is for Debbie Roa, who's been at St. Christopher's for
45 years.
45 years. Taught my kids a long time ago. Okay. And is an exemplary person. Their family has been here on the Key, been part of our community. So this is another very important proclamation. And as I have to be at the one, the Vice Mayor is going to be at the other one. But these are two outstanding individuals. So I'm glad to report that to you.
Thank you, Joe.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a presentation of the findings of the annual comprehensive financial
Yeah,
report.
let me do this if you don't mind. Can we take out of order the presentation by the Art and Public Places Board? Are they here?
Yes.
Yes.
A presentation by the Art and Public Places Board on the need for maintenance of village-wide art structures.
Yeah. Yes, please come to the podium.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Lourdes Joffre Colette, and you need my address,
Yes,
right?
yes.
430 Grand Bay Drive, PH1C, Key Biscayne. I'm the chair of Art in Public Places Advisory Board, and I'm here to report to you on behalf of the board. Art in Public Places was on hiatus during the pandemic, but since November of 2022, we have resumed our monthly meetings. The poor condition of the existing public art has become the immediate priority of the board, and we need your help. Since its founding in 2001, Art in Public Places has assisted the village of Key Biscayne in acquiring high caliber, well-recognized and culturally valuable artworks for our village. However, the maintenance of these cultural assets over time has been insufficient. As a result, many of the pieces are in poor condition and in desperate need of repair. Section 3.5 of the ordinance creating the Art in Public Places Ordinance states, quote, "The board is charged with making recommendations to the village council regarding the custody, supervision, maintenance, and preservation of works of art," unquote. The board is requesting that an operational line item be funded annually to ensure that our public art is repaired and preserved moving forward. The Art in Public Places Board looks forward to providing the Village Council with new and innovative public art recommendations. Unfortunately, this will not be feasible until we address the current issues with our public art inventory. This could only happen with your support. We also have, I was going to close, but I can't without going here. Since the inception of the board, a contracted art advisor, previously Cesar Trasovares, has facilitated the board's activities. We request that this curatorial function be funded continuously so a professional may assist the board and staff to complete the work required. Also, I was thinking what a great opportunity for Key Biscayne to continue to develop an art program to a world-class level. We have everything. I was just thinking out loud this morning, 3 of the most important art collectors in the world live right here in our village. Marty Margulies, Rosa de la Cruz, Diane Moss, and there are others, but these are very, very important. 2 of them sit on the Art in Public Places board and work the heck out, including Rosa, who was often found cleaning the Sarah Morris pools. And everybody knows this. I hope you know that. Rosa and Didi Moss, who are 2 considered. I mean, Rosa is considered among the top 3 contemporary art collectors in the world, and Didi and her family has been a benefactor of the arts for forever. These people are here to work with us, all of us. Our entire Art in Public Places board is great. Everybody wants to do the right thing, and we want you to do the right thing by helping us to have a good program so that we don't lose what we have, and it can be done very easily and without having to spend a lot of money at one time. If we do it in a line item in the budget, then we know what to do, and we can work with you on that.
Okay.
So I'm here to
Thank
answer
you.
anything, or
Thank you so much for your report. I think this is an appropriate time as we're coming up on budget season. I don't know. Yes, has somebody been the liaison with? Okay, Frank, you can address too.
Frank is our adopted.
All right. Let me get Allison first, and then.
My question first, thank you for your service, but also for coming here tonight and giving us such a thorough and polished, nice presentation. Thank you. My question is related to kind of how much. Have you guys looked at what's out there and what the most immediate needs are, and if you feel that this is something that can be phased in, or do you feel like there's a need for a line item and maybe a special project of first year? How's it looking?
I think a line item is the way to go. And we do have immediate things that need to be taken care of, but we have had certain maintenance in the past. It was taken over by different entities of the village, but it was not a fixed thing that we said, okay, we need to do. I think we need to schedule when the Bedia plazas are looked at and restored. Not, because you can stick one of the whatever, you can fix a little piece and then go on with life. But when it gets to a certain level, then you have to spend a lot of money. We don't want to do that. We're responsible. We also live here. We want to keep it down. But how could we work with you? We do need a line item. I think that would be the best.
Thank you.
All right, Frank?
The last board meeting, I think the most important thing that emerged was a recognition that Mr. Bedia will and needs to speak to maintenance of the Bedia plazas, and he will.
Yes, the Bedia plazas are immediate, and there's a little bit in the Monaco pools, and then there's another little bit in the Jim Drain sculpture, sundial. Yeah.
So I think one takeaway from this is going forward, the scope of solicitation for art bids really has to include ongoing maintenance. What's required, and also attention to the finished quality of the installation, whatever it is, so that maintenance is managed and reduced to the extent possible.
Well, the finished product was usually was well done. It's just it's been a long time.
Yes.
And there are a lot of bikes going up and down on top of them. They can sustain quite a lot of mistreatment, but not to this extent.
They would do much better if micro-mobility were better managed.
Well, we have kids. We all have kids, grandkids.
I guess the question's to Steve. Who's in charge of maintenance of these?
You're in
Of the
charge.
art.
You're in charge.
No.
No.
Listen, the only reason I'm saying, Steve is running the show, so who does he have of his directors that are taking care of this?
Right now, it's Todd who oversees it, but she's correct, we don't have any funding in the budget.
Well, you have no funding in the budget, so if we see something that's deteriorating, and we know it's going to cost us a lot more money later to replace it rather than fix it today, we don't do it? I mean, does it cost that much to fix these things today?
In some cases, yes, but we're going to work with the board to come up with an assessment of how much it costs.
Do we have a list of the items, or like you say, this needs work, this needs work, a priority list?
Yeah.
Get this today, tomorrow, etc.
Of course, we
Do-
have
does
a
your-
list,
you have a
and
list.
we will have the appropriate amounts for repair. And I think that, if we work together on this, we will go forward with a different, it's gonna be, it will have different results.
No, what you're saying
Yes.
makes a lot of sense. if things today can be fixed little money, well, tomorrow it's going to be a lot of money. So if things
Yeah,
are
exactly.
critical today,
That-
that if we don't do it, we have to know that today, if we need a special appropriation, whatever we need, we got to do it.
It's been, 20-some years.
That's fine,
That we're
but I'm
doing
saying,
it.
forget 20 years. I'm talking about today.
No,
What
of
do we have to
course.
do today to move forward?
Right.
To make sure we protect it, our investment, that's all. And
Yeah.
a priority list, 1, 2, 3, the worst, next to worst, et cetera.
Perhaps coming up with it, excuse me.
I got Mr. Moss and then Mr.
So,
Vasquez.
Yeah, I just want to add that, I think it's very important that we're maintaining this from an art standpoint. But additionally, I can tell you firsthand that my daughter fell off a scooter on one of the Badia plazas, the one on Mashta and Crandon. And I went back to go see it, and it's torn up. And no wonder why when a kid is turning on it, they slip and they fall. So, I think we can't just ignore them anyways, because this is a liability issue of somebody falling as well. So I think this should be in the bottom line of regular maintenance that we should be doing.
But is
Thank
Todd
you.
in
Either way.
charge of maintenance, Steve? Is Todd in charge of maintenance rather than Public Works?
Todd is in charge of the responsibility of tracking it, but Public Works would do the work.
Okay, Fernando, you?
Yeah, but I was just going to request, Steve, if there's a possibility to come up with an understanding of what we're talking about from maintenance and cost and what are we looking at?
Yeah, we'll work.
We can-
We'll work with Lourdes and we'll
Yeah.
get some
Okay,
of the
so
what
what I'm hearing is the consensus of council to work with you and with your board, and that will be with the manager and the liaison, which is the vice mayor. And I think that you're hearing from this group here is interested in getting to the bottom of this and trying to upgrade what we have and maintain what we have.
thank you so much. And, we have a wealth of art out there, and we got it at a very reasonable price. And that's because of the Rosas of the world and all of us, in conjunction with everybody who worked so hard on these things.
Yes,
So that's it. I knew we could resolve this.
absolutely. Thank you so much for
With
coming.
Stephen, right?
Yes, and
All
Mr.
right.
Mayor, I think we
Thank
could look
you.
at this, and we'll definitely work with Lourdes. I think there's, the approach. Obviously, we could look at it from a budget perspective, but I think there's some unique ways that we might be able to fund this too, maybe through grants and donations as well.
Okay, great.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to work with you on that
Okay,
too.
great.
Thank you.
The next item is a presentation of the findings of the annual comprehensive financial report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to call up Andrew Fearman, partner from the auditing accounting firm Caballero, Fearman, Urena, and Garcia to present the book you have in front of you is our fiscal year 22 annual comprehensive financial report.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. For the record, my name is Andrew Fearman. I'm a partner with Caballero, Fearman, Urena, and Garcia, and I am the partner in charge of the village's audit. I'm here to provide a brief presentation on the village's annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2022. The audited ACFR is the result of months of hard work of the village's staff, the finance team, the auditing team, all working together to be able to bring this final product to you this evening. It basically details the financial condition of the village as of September 30th, 2022. Just to mention, there's always, this is our first year auditing the village, and there's always that initial learning curve. The village also had a federal single audit this year for the funds that were, the COVID-19 funds that were received. So there was additional procedures that were also performed, which is why we were here presenting to you. It's typically a couple months later than you would normally expect, but we don't expect that to happen next year. Everything should move very smoothly. Just a couple of things within here. The first thing I wanted to point out was the table of contents. It is broken up into 4 sections. You have the introductory section, the financial section, the statistical section, as well as the compliance and reporting section. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to point out a couple things within each section for you. And the first thing I'm going to point out is actually within the introductory section. And it's on page Roman numeral 6 within that introductory section. And this is a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And the village did receive this prestigious award for the ACFR that was submitted for the September 30th, 2021 document. And this one is going to be submitted for consideration. We do expect that it meets all of the requirements and that the village will receive it once again. I'm going to move into the second section I mentioned, which is the financial section. The first thing I'm going to point out within there is on page 1. It's on pages 1 through 3.
Our esteemed CPA.
Yes.
Can you tell us, are we compliance? Are we doing good? Did we fail anything?
So yes, the village is compliant. The
right.
auditor's report that I was going to point out right now, there is a clean opinion, unmodified
All
opinion.
right.
Which is of course the only opinion that you want.
Now
in
you're
financial
talking.
statements.
See.
And also within the compliance section, which is in the back, there's also the reports that are required under generally accepted government auditing standards, as well as the rules of the Auditor General of the State of Florida.
So we don't need to fire Benjamin? Is that it?
No, you don't need to fire Benjamin.
All right.
Everything is in order. There are no specific findings. There was two items that were presented to management with recommendations that are detailed within there as well, but no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control, nor any instances of non-compliance that were found as a result of our audit. In fact, with that,
compared to other cities that you audit, how do we look?
well, the village is in good shape. The village has a strong fund balance in the general fund as well. In addition to that, as far as from an internal control standpoint, like I said, we didn't find anything. So in comparison to the other ones that we audit, you guys are at the higher level.
Okay.
And I guess with that, that's the kind of the general thing. With that, I'll leave there. If there's any other questions, I'll entertain them now.
Questions? All right. So
we can. I was just gonna say we can reach out to you when we go through this a little bit more in detail, right? Because we just received it.
That's what I was going to also mention. It's a lot of information. So absolutely, if anybody wants to have any kind of one-on-one calls or meeting, just feel free to reach out. And Benjamin has my information, and we can meet to discuss.
In the recommendations were in the nature of
they were
nitty-gritty things, or
They were related. One, there were actually two that were that had been from the previous year that was related to the stormwater to the sanitation receivable, which has continued to decrease, which is good. In addition to that, also had to do with review of actuarial evaluations, just to have to document that process.
Okay.
So it's being done. It's just documenting the process.
Terrific.
Sorry, and the sanitation, that's the things that are like in arrears, because going forward we've put it on the property tax bill.
Yeah, this is one of the recommendations was made in the prior year, and it's basically a status update of what we've done. This is collection on the old receivable and what we've done. And
this is solid waste, right?
Solid waste.
Mm-hmm. So solid waste.
So you like our new method, though?
Yes, we do.
The next item is a certificate of achievement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, he mentioned that already, so he mentioned that, didn't he?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
All right.
Now we're looking forward to more certificates of achievement.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is the consent agenda.
Move. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item.
8C.
The next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, supporting the provisions of Ordinance 2012-10 relating to the village's density cap and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Chad, you want to explain what we're doing here so that everyone is clear?
So at the last council meeting, there was a discussion, and in light of that discussion, we were given direction to enact a resolution relating to the density cap. We felt that it was appropriate to just make a resolution supporting the density cap, effectively supporting what the previous council has done.
Excellent.
So that's what we did.
And that was based on an ordinance of 2012?
It was based on an ordinance of 2012. I mean, I can give you more background. I know some of the members are quite familiar with it. This ordinance came about after the Oceana development and after a long discussion with council. The purpose of this ordinance is it provides that no site plan can be approved which allows for an increase in density above the current density that's approved for that site. And it applies village-wide with some exceptions for the single-family, I think maybe two-family districts, but for the multifamily districts it applies.
Okay.
This is fantastic. This is fantastic. I'd love to see some outreach, or at least folks to really know about this, because we are going to consistently. I don't want to hear again that we have issues related to density or growth and density. I think there's a great opportunity to do an outreach, or at least, I'm not saying go out there, but folks, find a way that folks become aware of it, so it doesn't become a broken record, and we hear consistently issues about density when we're actually seeing a full ordinance in place and the full will of the council. Thank you,
Mr. Vice Mayor.
The purpose of this is sound, and responding to what we experienced recently is sensible. I got a quibble about the language because I think it's kind of almost inane to say that we support an ordinance. It doesn't say anything. We have to support our laws or we have to repeal them.
Right.
It would seem to me to more adequately address what we're trying to accomplish here if we say we reaffirm.
Yeah.
And we find, if you want to allow this thought to be introduced, that the reasons that this was compellingly important in 2012 are more compellingly obvious in 2023.
Yeah, we actually discussed that at length. We actually would not want to do that because the word reaffirm could be used as a point of entry to reopen this issue. And we believe that supporting it would just let it stand. And I'm happy to have a dialogue with you further off it. But
if your legal analysis is as you just summarized, it would take us either 3 years or 30 seconds to reach the same conclusion. So we're good.
Yeah, believe me, we spent a lot of time internally talking about it, and we just feel that it does enough. You guys, I think you're all acknowledging it, you're supporting it. Reaffirming starts when you start looking at the definition, and we just felt that it could be moving to a place where we don't want this to be a point of entry.
So to make this more meaningful, what do you think of the introduction of a more current conclusion that the circumstances that we're contending with warranted this in 2012 and do so even more compellingly in 2023?
I think that we could modify whereas if you'd like. I think it does acknowledge why it was done, and I think the circumstances have obviously not gotten any better.
Right.
So we can, if you would like, modify that the circumstances that were the reasoning that it was done in 2012 are, the same or worse basically now today. So
I don't feel terribly strongly, and I don't want to be thought of as advocating for this, but if someone who's more uninitiated to this whole issue than we are reads this, it kind of doesn't say anything. So it may be more intuitively clear if there was a little bit of elaboration on its purpose.
Well, again, we could add in, like I said, in the whereas, acknowledging that the circumstances have that the village faced in 2012 have gotten worse and not better.
Suggestion for what it's worth.
You want to table the item? You guys can work on it during the meeting, and then we can bring it back and add that whereas, and we'll be done.
That's fine.
Great.
Okay.
And we can figure out how to get it on Nextdoor and WhatsApp chats in the meantime.
May I have a second for the tabling of the item?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the second reading of an ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, amending Section 25-31 Business Tax Schedule of Chapter 25 of the Village Code of Ordinances to increase the business tax receipt schedule rates, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. At this point, I'll open this item for public hearing. Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is closed. Discussion on the ordinance before us.
Joe?
Yes, sir.
I was against this last meeting. I'll be against this meeting. There's no reason to increase the tax to people that they do not derive a benefit, but simply we want to collect more money from people for our budget so we can spend it. So it makes no sense to do this. They don't, they don't get many of the benefits the taxpayers get, and yet this is an additional tax. And the nonsense to say, well, this helps us regulate them and know what they do in their businesses, it's nonsense.
Further conversation and discussion? Mr. Manager?
I have no comment. I think that just simply, this is something that we haven't increased since 1992. Obviously, the folks who do the work to make sure that we regulate businesses, their pay has increased, their costs have increased the village, and we're just trying to keep up to pace with that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember McCormick.
Yes.
Councilmember Moss.
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mayor Roscoe.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Yes.
Councilmember London.
No.
The ordinance is approved on second reading. Is adopted on second reading, excuse me. The next item is the second reading of a capital project authorizing ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, selecting Metro Express, Inc. for construction of village-wide stormwater drainage improvements and roadway resurfacing in an amount not to exceed $1,014,229.50, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank you.
Been moved and seconded. Let me, needs a public hearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The item before us is open for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on the item? Seeing none, a public hearing is closed. You want to give a brief statement as to what we did last month and what we are doing on second reading here?
Yes, last month was the first reading of the capital authorizing ordinance. The village requires that any construction project over the value of $500,000 go through 2 readings as a capital authorizing ordinance, and everybody in the village received a notification via postcard related to this project between first and second reading. So now that we have the second reading, this is up for a vote.
Yeah, I have a few questions, Mayor.
Yes, go
All right.
ahead.
So just very quickly, looking into this a little bit closer, I was just wondering from the prices, the revised totals. So the top 3 that you chose was the American Design, Engineering Construction, the Stout Group, and Metro Express. They all did a revised total at the bottom. One went down about 12%, one went down 8%, but Metro Express went down 38%. So I'm trying to follow why there's such a, it was, went down more than $600,000. I just want to make sure we're not getting into bait and switch type thing or what's going on. Like that, there's just such a variation here. I'm just trying to follow what the reasoning is.
Yeah, I might have my procurement officer handle that one. Darren, if you can speak to that.
Hi, good afternoon. When we reviewed the prices with the vendors, when we called them in, we realized they had quite a bit of discrepancies and a misunderstanding of what the scope was entirely about. So we asked them to go back and readjust their prices. Metro Express only adjusted one item, which was the milling of the streets, where they overcompensated tremendously on that after they understand the scope whereas the other two vendors made adjustments practically on about 50% of their line items.
Okay. And then do you guys have the breakdown in the revised total in area 1, 2, and 4? Do you guys have that broken
Yes, we
down?
have the
Okay, I just
itemized,
want to make
yes.
sure.
And it's going to be a part of the contract.
Okay, and then the last thing that I'm always worried about when we start touching the streets is just making sure that we have some type of quality standards that we want to meet when it comes to curbing and how we finish, what people's front yards look like. That we're not starting to put in these 6-inch curbs and then we're getting phone calls and what's going on, and now I have flooding and they didn't have flooding and now I can't, this is unsafe for me to walk on the street. I want to make sure that these contractors understand what we want to have, what we don't, and what level of standard that that we expect for
Totally understandable.
Yeah.
As a part of the quality assurance process, we're also going to have a CEI component to this project. So we're going to have engineers in the field making sure that the contractors are following our guidance. Mm-hmm. So there'll be some assurances there.
So what makes me worried is that we did on Cypress,
Mm-hmm.
there was some re-leveling that was done,
Yeah.
but then there was a curb that we don't typically use in the middle of the street that was
Mm-hmm.
used. How do we assure, like if you leave it to any engineer, they're like, yeah, that's the best option to use a D-type curb, but maybe that's not what we want. Do we have any clear specifications to these people who are going to be regrading, redoing stuff of how we want it to look to make sure that we're not putting stuff in that you would see in downtown
Yeah.
Miami or something like that here in Key Biscayne?
Well, part of the process will be to do an informational, meeting with the public to gain some feedback related to the type of concerns that they have before we even start. So we'll get a little bit of that coming forward, and that might tweak the decisions that we make in the field. In the bid package, I know Jake Ozyman, our prior Public Works Director, gave some specs related to what types of catch basins we would be regrading and how we'd be doing that. Some of them are too high, so that's a very different situation than a catch basin that's already low but without a curb. So you're going to see variation in the treatments that we employ, but in all situations, we're going to try to mitigate any negative consequences. The idea here is that currently we have almost no slope on our roads. We need to add a slope on our roads so that when it does rain, it actually drains to the catch basins instead of just in people's yards. So the outcome here shouldn't be more flooding in different places. It should be water goes into the place it's supposed to be.
Right.
Thank you.
If I may, Mayor.
Question, Joe?
But okay.
You done?
I know it was,
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, thank you.
okay. After
Ed and then Fernando.
Colleen, I see that you basically had them list what they do and what they subcontract out. Do you put a weight on that when you're deciding who's more qualified or less qualified?
I wasn't a part of the evaluation process, but Darren can speak to the weighting.
Yes, that's something we also look at. We also vend the subcontractors to make sure that they are competent and able to do the work that's ahead of them as well.
Well, in Metro, you asked Metro to do it. They didn't give you any subcontractors.
They did not give the subcontractors, but what they did tell us is that the company that's doing some of the asphalt, providing the asphalt is their subcontractors.
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
They did not give us when we spoke with them, they did tell us that the company that's providing the asphalt for them to after the milling is one of their subcontractors, but they didn't give us an itemized listing.
They're only subcontracting the milling of the asphalt?
The asphalt,
Exists,
yeah.
everything else they're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Also, we did do the reference checks, and most of the municipalities that use them rated them very high.
Good, thank you.
Oh, Fernando?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think as it relates to this contract, I think the work is fine. We're doing something that is important and needs to happen. But we all have to understand that as we move further into construction, we are always going to be dealing in an open risk situation. It's a roadway. We're opening up a roadway. We don't know what's below it. We don't know really where the water may have been going and how it may affect others. But I think what it says more than anything else is that we really have to have an understanding of the cost and the logistics and what we're getting into before we do try to minimize the risk. And it's not a discussion for today, but it is something that we really have to progress in how we do value contracting, what I call value contracting. That is not necessarily a low bid, neither it's a high bid, but it's a condition somewhere in the middle where we have a better understanding of how to contain the risk and how we're managing the risk in the process. So my suggestion is for future projects that we, you know, look at value contracting. There's a lot of different, I think University of Arizona has done a lot of extensive studies on value contracting, and something that perhaps we can talk about. I know it's something we can talk about further, but in this project, I agree we need to move forward with it, but other ones where we see a higher risk, I would encourage that process. Thank you.
Mr. Moss. Very one small quality control issue thing that I have seen before in City of Miami. When I'm driving to work, I drive on South Miami, and they had repaved a whole, you know, a couple thousand feet that you're driving on, and they were all done, and you're driving, you're kind of like bouncing around, and you're like, what the heck is going on? And then you get off that section, and it's nice and smooth, and I'm thinking in my head, who was looking after that contractor to make sure the quality was what they were going to say they were going to do? Absolutely. And you have to kind of drive on this to feel it, and you can't just sit there and like look at it, right? You got to drive on and say, no, this is not acceptable. So I just want to make sure that somebody on our team is overlooking that, making sure that that's not what we end up with from a low bidder, something that's rough and bumpy, and it's not what we thought.
One of the things she mentioned, we're also going to bring in a CEI firm to do it as well, construction and engineering inspection as well. Okay. No, we know that we need to do this right. Not only do we have to do a project right, but also it sets the standard for where we're going to go next. Excellent. So we got to make sure that we get our project management and construction management under control.
We have nobody in house that can do that.
We don't have a public works director right now.
How about our building inspectors?
Well, they can inspect buildings, but they can't inspect roads.
Okay.
Okay.
You sure?
Let's finish this up. I wanted to mention on this particular project, and I got these at home. Okay, so whatever it costs, apparently this is the cost of transparency. So we did get that out to you. The public has been informed. I think that all of us here would agree that this is a vital, important project to get what we've been talking about. This is a Band-Aid on our flooding issue, and the bigger one is coming, but this is hopefully a Band-Aid that will help us get to that next big infrastructure project that the village is working on. Okay, well, with that, Madam Clerk, take us home.
Councilmember Moss.
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Yes.
Mayor Roscoe.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Yes.
Councilmember London.
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick.
Yes.
The item is approved, adopted on second reading. The next item is the resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to issue a work order to Moffat and Nickel, Inc. for engineering, surveying, and marine biological services related to the beach renourishment project in an amount not to exceed $94,711 and providing for an effective date.
Move. Second.
Thank you.
Been moved and second. Discussion on the item? Seeing no discussion, let's go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the village manager to issue a work order to Moffat and Nickel, Inc. for engineering, design, and environmental permitting services for the design of an emergency interim beach renourishment to address shoreline impacts from Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Nicole in an amount not to exceed $78,976 and providing for an effective date.
Moved. Second.
Thank you.
Discussion with the money that we hope to get from Tallahassee, this will also be part of that project.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So the cost as it was, and we obviously put the cost into the state back in January. So the cost was based on the cost of sand at that point. But it was $1.9 million. The state put in half of that into their budget, obviously waiting for the governor's approval. And then you just heard Representative Lopez mention that she has also $450,000. So 75% of that $1.9 million will be covered by the state. We'll cover the other 25%. We have to get this design moving now because, as we all know, We've got a very small window to do beach renourishment between
Right.
February and April, so we want to have that design on the table to when this is approved, we can get moving forward.
Let's do
All
it.
right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is a resolution.
Let me do, excuse me, let me do the zoning item so that we can hear that 10E.
10E? Yes.
Yes.
A resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving a variance to allow a second-story addition with a side setback of 9.44 feet for the property located at 1047 Mariner Drive, where 15 feet are otherwise required within the Village Estates VE zoning district, providing for findings, providing for recording, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
It's properly before us. Mr. Attorney, can you guide us here?
Sure, this is a quasi-judicial hearing. The clerk needs to swear in anyone who's going to speak on this matter. If so, please stand up and raise your hand, and the clerk will swear you in.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you give this evening is the truth?
And we typically allow the applicant to come forward and give a presentation, and then the staff will give a presentation and have a public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and Consuls. I'm here. My name is Alexander Ambrolo, resident of Key Biscayne, 121 Crown Boulevard. I'm here to represent Tatiana Clarkson in the request to extend the setback on the second story for 1047 Mariner Drive. We have been working on the plans, and the owners purchased this property a year ago with the idea of doing a addition on the first story on the left side of the house. A renovation has been done 5 years ago. There were piles installed on that side of the house, so that's the reason why they have to do it on that side. If they would like to do it on the other side, we'll have to demolish basically the half of the house and put piles and start like a new structure on that side. So that's why we're requesting that, because it will be like the level of the work, and we will be disturbing neighbors. It will be like 1 year like to build like a new house, but if the owner of the house gets this allowance, probably he will have in consideration only to do a second story on that side of the house. We are following all the setbacks on the first story. We're only out of the setbacks on the second story, and the building code says that if you are building like a new you're building from ground a new house, you're allowed to have an 8 feet setback on the second story. So if we will be doing as a brand new home, we'll be allowed to do it, but we're not allowed to do it because this is only an addition. So that's why I'm asking for you to consider this variance on the code, because for us it doesn't make sense. Like if you are building like a new house, you're allowed to do it, but if you want to do an addition, you're not allowed to do it.
Makes no sense.
Thank you.
Jeremy.
The building.
Good evening, Jeremy Karras-Gauger, Building, Zoning, and Planning Director. So I think you'll find, if you had the chance to read my memo, that I am recommending denial on this because there was a clear mandate from a previous commission to proceed with an ordinance change requiring this 15-foot setback on the second level. However, I also point out that you are allowed to build second level up to 22 feet, which is maybe a little bit lower than a typical two-story home, but you are allowed to go up to 22 feet at that 7.5-foot setback for new construction. So at the very least, we have something of a contradiction in the code. You know, we did do the research because this was a recommendation that came forward from the ZORC, the Zoning Review Committee, in 2007, I think it was, and legislation changed in 2010. So, you know, we want to respect that request, maybe, and also erring on the side of being conservative, because maybe the intent is that all construction actually have more of a setback on the second floor, and there are certain incentives in the code to encourage that. We have that requirement that there's an 8 and 12 ratio, so things have to step back. But again, that kicks in at 22 feet. It's actually more than 22 feet in this case, because the original house is actually at 9.44 feet setback from the property line, not over at 7.5. So that's why their request is only for more or less 5.5 feet variance, not 7.5, if it were as close to the property line as it were allowed.
Can I ask our attorney, is that how you interpret the existing code?
The existing code, yes, with two comments. One is that if the length of the home is 35 feet, I believe you have to set back another 2 feet, which is the common scenario, mostly in Key Biscayne. And also, there's an FAR bonus, I think, of 0.03 for if you were to set back larger than the 7.5 feet. So I think in practice, what you have found, and Jeremy can speak of it, is that most people do set back because they want to take advantage of the FAR bonus, plus with the architectural requirements of the 35-foot length, plus the 8 and 12, you end up never really getting at 7.5. But it is possible, as Jeremy said.
And did either one of you find the Zork recommendation? Why did it go in this direction?
So we did track down the report, found the recommendation, but the intent isn't clearly described. It's actually, it really talks about encouraging redevelopment instead of new construction. That's the only language that I found in the report.
Oh.
Yes.
I think if ever there was a time for a variance to be granted, this is it, because you can do something that's new, but you can't do an addition. So if they knock the house down, then redo it, they can go that way, right? Yeah. But if they just do it as an addition, they can't do it.
Not really.
Excuse me, I'll get back.
Sorry.
The new is within 7.5 feet. They can go 7.5 feet. Now they can have set back 15 feet. So if they knock the house down and rebuild it there, they could go 7.5 feet setback, right?
There would be certain limitations based
Well,
on the length of
basically,
the wall, the height
assuming
up to 22
everybody
feet.
gets
Yeah.
their maximum 0.47 one way or the other as far as the FAR goes, when you're talking about the FAR.
Right.
One way or the other. So basically, it's so contradictory, it's silly. I mean, how can you not give these guys a variance if you say, well, if you build it new, then 7.5 feet's good. But since you're making addition, everything else, you got to be back 15. To me, it just doesn't make any. This is, like I say, a perfect time why a variance should be granted.
Ms. McCormick.
Jeremy, if they were building this exact structure new, could they build that up to this straight wall up that close to the neighbor to 32 feet?
No, they would need to have a portion of the upper, up to 32 or 35 feet. No, they would have to have a portion on
So
the
they
upper
can't
side.
build this?
No, they need the variance for that. I need to do the diagram because they are at 9.44 feet to be absolutely certain of giving a definitive answer.
8 and 12, right?
Yeah, because the 8 and 12.
So it's 2/3.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 2/3
of 6 feet is 4.
Yeah, I mean they would need a 6-inch variance at that point.
6-inch variance.
They'd need a 6-inch variance rather than a 5-foot 4-inch
But they
variance.
could do this straight wall up?
Yes.
If they were set back at 10 feet, they could do the straight wall up. They're set back at 9.44 feet.
They need a 6-inch variance.
Jeremy, don't you have to look at the length of the building too to make sure?
Yeah, you'd need to see like if the building is more than 35 feet, although I think this is only about 2 rooms, they would need to jog the building 2 feet. But that with the jog, it doesn't say the entirety of the rest of the building needs to be 2 feet set back. It's to encourage architectural variation. So we do see buildings that have a long wall,
And
a
you
2
would
foot portion
also,
inset.
you would also need to confirm that they weren't utilizing the FAR bonus. They wouldn't need that also.
Yeah, I mean, in
For
this
additional
particular
setback.
case, they're not maxed out on FAR. So, you know, without doing the numbers, I suspect that they're under on their FAR. They would still remain under on their FAR.
Mr. Architect.
You wanted to talk first, or? I can go after Frank. 'Cause I'm sure he's going to give some resorts.
I'm sympathetic to Ed's reaction. I don't know whether this is the right code section, but the Zork, my memory of the Zork justification for this was to encourage renovation, to allow people to expand the volume of their residences without having to demolish and rebuild.
Yeah, but this is the exact opposite.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. It's saying that if you do it, you can only go out 7.5 feet, but if you build from scratch.
No, I'm speaking to the intention behind the ordinance.
Of the intention of what actually is.
So I think, and I couldn't remember when I was speaking with Jeremy, the code section, but it might be 30-29. My thought is not to, I don't want to deny this outright. I'd rather defer it and see whether there's not a solution that can be reached in conformity with the code as it is. And if it can't be, to come back and consider whether a variance is appropriate. That's what I'd rather do.
So you want to redraw the plans?
I want to understand, I think that 3029, if that's the right reference, tried to get away from linear feet as the sole benchmark on setback compliance, and also looked at what whether the abutting neighbor would consent, if that was an issue for the abutting neighbor. I don't happen to know how the abutting neighbor feels about this. I think that's a relevant consideration if we're going to be facing a variance. That's normally what we consider.
Well, we could pass the variance subject to the abutting neighbor.
Do we know what the abutting neighbor's opinion is on this?
We didn't do specific outreach beyond the notification.
So the abutting neighbor and vague memory, now I get very vague in my memory, but that there was an attempt to get away from linear feet and look at the resulting lot coverage, the open space within the lot after the desired improvement was built. So some percentage benchmark of open space, non-permeable surface. It was at least the intent to create greater flexibility for renovation.
Yeah, so in that case, you know, this is a second floor addition on an existing building footprint. So it's actually very beneficial in retaining open space because they're not maxed out in this particular location on there.
Looks pretty normal to me.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the picture. I mean, so there is still the ratio between pervious and impervious retained.
Yes.
So there will be no impact.
There's no impact by doing a second story addition. That's actually, it's helpful in that.
It's pretty green around, I saw.
All right, Mr. Moss?
Yeah, I mean, this one I've been going back and forth in my head. I definitely understand what Councilmember London is saying, and I came to that same conclusion that that's kind of ridiculous in this scenario. I think maybe it's a discussion whether we want it to be 15 feet with new and addition, or we want it to be 7.5 with new and addition, but we have to say one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is that if we grant this variance today and then we figure out we want 15 feet, we did the opposite of what we wanted to do. But I don't know if we need a further discussion about that. But one of the most important things to me here is, and I think you mentioned it, I think you're the builder, right? You're the contractor. I think you mentioned it when you came up. When was this house built originally? You said 2 years ago?
No, they had like a renovation 2 years ago.
Renovation 2 years ago.
Okay, but the foundation that you're going to build a second story on.
2 years ago.
Okay. All right, that's not that wasn't going where I wanted it to go, because the idea was if you built the whole house new with a one story, thinking that later you would add a second story that you could have done, I would have been very sympathetic to it. The fact that you remodeled it and added an addition within the code with the idea of breaking the code by adding on top of it is a little bit different.
This is an architect.
I know. The last thing is, I go, okay, let me see what they're asking for. What is it, like 6 feet or here?
5 feet.
Then you look at the plan on the second floor, and if anybody has sat down and looked at the plan, I've never seen a bathroom so big in my life. I mean, you can fit the biggest closet you've ever seen, the biggest master bedroom into just the bathroom that has 27 feet by 15 feet plus another 10 feet by 12. I mean, this is an enormous room. So I'm thinking, are you guys crammed up that you're really pushing out to that side and you need it? And then I look at it going, man, you can easily rearrange this and still stay within the variant, without a variance, and still have a very spacious room in here. It's not that we're getting cramped up and being pushed into that area. So then I start losing that sympathy in that aspect of how you plan it. So I don't know. I might be in favor with Frank. Push this out. Maybe we have a discussion about whether we want 15 or 7.5 feet. Come back and either give them a variance or not.
That's where I am.
You're back?
Yeah, all due respect to how unfair Ed thinks this is a discussion similar to one that we have on the agenda later about our process for site plan review, that everyone feels it would be beneficial for us to hear from both sides, and then to have it be standard practice to then take time for your follow-up questions and additional research and then come back to vote. And to me, that makes me feel more comfortable. So I would be in favor of doing that. But I do think when we talk about it later, we should really make it, even for variances, decide if we want that to be our process, because it is unfair to the petitioner to come to expect an answer and then have us say like, well, gee, I'm not comfortable right now giving the answer. It would be better for them to know up front.
Yes. Totally unfair.
Okay, so I think, can you restate what your motion would be here?
The predicate for my motion is to understand whether there is an allowance in the code as it is right now that possibly with a architectural tweak on the dimension of this addition would require no variance. And I'm remembering section 3029 and the policy behind the ZORC all these years ago to encourage this very thing. So that brings me to my motion, which is to defer consideration of this variance, bring it back maybe either the next meeting or 2 meetings to give us time to look at this and understand the architectural variability that might be able to save the day, and whether our code actually does allow for this.
Mr. Friedman, is this an allowable motion?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Do I have a second?
The only question is...
Wait. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
It's seconded. Okay.
Yeah,
Discussion.
The only question is, Vice Mayor Kaplan didn't say, is it the next meeting or the meeting? He gave either or. So
Okay.
Clarification on that.
On the item.
On the item. Jeremy, an architectural tweak would mean having a 7.5 foot a 15-foot setback, correct? Anything else
to
will not
avoid
comply with the code.
To avoid a variance, yeah.
Yeah, so your architectural tweak is to redesign the house, bring it back. Is that correct, Frank?
No, that's
No,
not.
okay,
That's
well,
not.
well, he's telling us the only way it would happen is by bringing it back to 15 feet to comply with the code.
If our
Yeah,
code
it doesn't even
allows
come back.
for the, as I said earlier, the separation from a linear setback benchmark to an open space resulting benchmark, I'd like to know that. And I'd like to know what the neighbor thinks about this.
I
too.
think what the Vice Mayor is saying is he would like to go back and have the staff and myself research the code and see if under chapter or section 30-29 of the code that this development could be permissible without the need for a variance.
Is that right, Jeremy? Did you see?
That's my interpretation, because I know the section of the code to which he's referring to, which talks about existing buildings and being able to build along their existing building line. And we actually discussed that, Olga and I, staff discussed that leading up to this. So, and there's room for interpretation in that section, so.
So you think that basically you're interpreting it wrong?
There's a chance.
You're making a mistake? You?
So
It
what's
happens.
the time for the next meeting?
Okay, so-
to consider this.
yeah,
Let's bring it back next week.
let's-
Bring it back.
Let's
These people
do,
built something.
okay, let's see, well, just to be clear, Mr. Brolo, I think this is better than getting denied, so, if you want to, work with the, building director and our attorney, hopefully maybe there is some solution to this situation.
Well, you're assuming everybody is going to vote to defer it. Nobody's going to consider it of the guy, of his house, of his builder, of anything else, right? That's what we're doing.
We're going to call that question.
Well, no, but by calling the question, we're not being very considerate of the petitioner or anything else.
Or perhaps we're being considerate of the entire rest of the
something
community.
Which is contradictory.
Right.
And now, because of that, we're going to penalize people.
Before we
Or not.
call the question, Mayor, I don't know if you opened it up to the public at all.
No, we haven't. Jeremy, can you step aside a second? All right. Public hearing is open on item 10E. Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is closed. We have a motion to defer that would take now precedence. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Roll call? Yes. Vice Mayor Kaplan?
Yes.
Councilmember London?
No.
Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Sardinius?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
No.
Mayor Roscoe?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, Mr. Mayor, 10C, a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, selecting Coastal Building Maintenance, Inc. for custodial services pursuant to request for proposal number 2023-08 in an amount not to exceed annually $443,632, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
I hope you never need them before council. You are cruel. You're cruel. You're absolutely cruel.
Tab 11,
You're cruel. You're cruel.
right?
Get away from me. You're just cruel.
Yes, sir.
Tab 11.
You're not considerate. You don't give a shit about people.
So this is for, I am up again. This is in my role as acting interim sort of public works person. But I'm here to present the janitorial services contract, which went through the RFP process. CBM, our current bidder, our current provider, came out on top of that process, very, very close in terms of pricing. And obviously we have a continuity of care issue there where they have been providing very good services. A little bit of the background on this is that this went out to bid. There was an adjustment of scope, a professionalization of the contract, frankly. This was something that was existing on a year-to-year continuation since 2003. So this is the most formal contract we will have with them for some time. There's quite a bit of scope adjustment in here as well, an expansion in cleaning responsibilities to include parks, to include more of the fire building, but an exclusion of facilities management and facilities maintenance. So they were the second lowest price, but highest quality. I think the process and the votes indicated them as the leading bidder. Even if you threw out the highest and lowest and recalculated, they would still end up being winning bidder. They were within $7,000 of the two lowest prices, which I think I worked out to is about 6 days worth of work. And considering that the transition plan from the number 2 bidder it felt sort of like a copy and paste job. And we don't have to deal with any transition plan with CBM. So that's sort of the reasoning behind how we got here.
Are we happy with their performance so
Yes.
Question.
No question. Over the past 10 years I've been around here on council, well, I heard complaints about their performance. And they came back and we were going to get rid of them before. And they said, no, we'll give you more people, we'll do this, but constant complaints about their performance. Now, that's all been taken care of, and the last year or so, everything's fine. Is that the case?
I've only been in here a year and a half. I haven't heard that many complaints.
Well, I'm just telling you, but in the past, we
Yeah.
had plenty of complaints all the time. In fact, that's when we talked about bidding it, and they always were able to get postponing the bid for the last 5 or 7 years. But because we constantly used them, we never bid it. We just had complaints, and every time we're going to do something, they came back and said, okay, we're going to improve. So my question is, have they improved to the point now that we're happy with them? That's all I'm asking.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I mean, I think there's a couple of reasons why we chose to do this. One, I think, one of the things that you asked me to do and I'm committed to do is professionalize our contracts, which is why we went out to do this. It was a very small year to year. The 2 years I've been here, I think they've been outstanding, provided outstanding services. And I think if you go back, when you are and have a difficulty with a contractor and they're able to come forward and make amends, and do that in a very, agreeable way, that is also a good sign of a good contractor as well. So I'm happy with the results. I think there are a number of good firms here, but I think we picked the best one.
Nothing more. That's all I asked.
Just a point of perspective for what it's worth. I think the complaint was a single source complaint. My personal view was that it was not warranted and unfair. I thought they were doing a good job.
Is this the fire folks are complaining?
No, it was a member of council.
She didn't like
They were complaining in what do you call it, the community center. They're complaining many places weren't being cleaned properly. They were filthy.
I didn't.
And they came back, there's a meeting with them, and they came back, because we threatened to get rid of them, and they came back and they said, we're going to take care of it and do everything. And in fact, what Steve said in the last 2 years, they're going, Frank, that's great, they have taken care of it, and I'm happy. But we had plenty of complaints.
I've got some questions that I want to go through. And I have questions mostly about the methodology, the way that we present things. So, for example, the village paid $423,000 for this service before including the facility maintenance. Can you tell me how much of that was facility maintenance?
I can't accurately. I can track down what information we have and get back to you.
Okay. The other thing that wasn't really clear in the memo is, I guess we used to buy our consumables, but now we're not. Is that correct or not?
We have them buy it. They buy it.
Okay, so this is departure of what we were doing before.
Right.
So now we are asking them to buy toilet paper and whatever else.
There's two reasons for that. One, obviously they've got the ability to buy at wholesale, and secondly, with very limited storage in our facility, we like to see it as a just-in-time capability as opposed to trying to stock it and inventory it on site.
Okay. A couple of things, and I would apply this to some of the other procurements that we're doing is one of the things that is strikingly missing, and that was to Ed's point, is we need to have a good evaluation of our present vendor when these things come before us, because obviously we need to know that the present vendor was doing things well or not, and the criteria that we use. And that would be an improvement that I think would be very valuable to make, so that we have after every contract and after every contract year, there should be someone at the village who is doing exactly what has been suggested, is giving us a good indication of how that's working. The other thing, and I think I've mentioned that before, but it would be good also to have comparable and benchmarking information about, similar services being done in Pinecrest or Aventura or whatever you all think are appropriate benchmarks for us. I think that would be important to do. I think it's important too that you mention or you assign as part of this contract the person that would be doing this evaluation or would be responsible for this contract, so that we know. Again, this is the second time that I see that we don't go for the lowest bidder. This happened in the other contract that you loved very much and you approved, remember? But all kidding aside, do we award any points for having a lesser amount, in our evaluation? Because, obviously you don't want to award a lot because somebody could come and underbid, but you would want to have, the difference here was what, $8,000?
Yeah, and before I let it turn over to Darren here, just quickly though, remember this is an RFP, and that is one criteria.
Right.
I believe in some cases we rated as 25%, some cases we rated 35%. But Darren, you can give a little more detail on what it was in this
case.
one.
It was 35% of the score. 35% of the score overall was based on pricing and financial strength of the company.
Okay. All right. And I was glad to hear that your evaluation committee wasn't aware of what the pricing was.
No,
so at least they're evaluating on the merits of the thing. One of the other things that that I noticed in a couple of the procurements here tonight that we need, and we need your expertise, Mr. Procurement, is to make sure that one score doesn't skew completely. And this could have been possible here, I think, but that's something that I would like to see us look at, because we don't want that happening. We don't want one score to skew what the other four people that you have in the procurement process.
And that is why we reach out to those individuals and require a justification from them as well.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I now your first question, I wanted to address that, and obviously one of the reasons why Jeremy could not answer that is because we've had a very limited contract, to say the least, with CBM over the last 20 years, and so we haven't had the ability to do the accounting between cleaning versus maintenance versus parts. This requires a much more stricter accounting of what they do and submittals as well along the way.
Okay. Couple other things. Under the scope of services, emergency services, I'm not sure I read this. Are they bound to us if we have a hurricane and all our buildings are in need of cleaning? I'm not sure this says that they have to do it. Do we have some kind of assurance in that area?
Did you hear the mayor's question? So what he asked is if during a state of emergency, are they required to stay on site to continue cleaning?
Yes, that was also part of the discussion.
Okay,
it's package.
It's somewhere in here.
Yeah, in the bid package, they're part of the. They're included in case of there's a need for emergency response.
Okay. And is it clear, I'm not real clear here on the weekend activities, is it, are they required, is this, and it's included, or are we gonna
The
get?
weekend activities is included.
It's included, so
Yes.
we're not gonna get additional invoice for,
No.
no, okay. Let's see. I thought this item on, was a very good item on the deductions. You know, in case of some reason that the labor hours will be reduced and that we won't be charged for that. I thought that was a good provision in the contract. Okay. I
got one point, Joe. Joe brought up a point about the supplies. We have any estimate of what the supplies cost? And my next question.
Are you talking currently or in the
Well,
future?
currently, obviously. Are they, you say they're going to supply them. Are they supplying them at cost or a markup?
Darren, have to ask that.
No, the supplies is a run-through expense.
Sorry?
The supplies is a run-through expense. Whatever it costs them, that cost is passed on.
So there's
to
no
us.
markup?
No markup, no.
No storage fees? No
No.
storage fees?
No, obviously.
No.
Well, no, that could be their cost. So I'm just saying. So it's strictly what they pay a
Whatever they
vendor.
pay is that's the cost of passed on to us.
Thank you.
Okay. One other question for you. Most of our contracts are 3 years with 2 one-year options. This one, was there a reason why you went 3 and 3?
It was a recommendation from the department director to go with the 3 and 3.
Okay, but I mean, it wasn't a negotiation, it wasn't something that was part of a...
No.
No.
What do we have to do in case we're not happy to get rid of them?
So one of the provisions in this contract, which is part of, professionalizing them, was we have a lot more benchmarks and evaluation standards in here, and I believe there's performance.
There's an annual performance review of the services with the contractor, so that allows us to, should the services not step up to where it need to be an exit out.
So we can terminate after 1 year?
No.
No.
We technically
No.
can terminate with or without cause with 5 days notice. That's what it says.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
We can terminate with or we can terminate without cause with 5 days notice.
Call the question.
Okay.
I just want to say
one more
thing.
question.
Yeah, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement or anything. I just want to understand, I think it'd be great for the council to understand what the selection process is through procurement. I know we get different thoughts and ideas, but maybe perhaps it would be a good idea, how do we go about selecting contractors or vendors with a rating process and what methodologies we apply to that. I think it would make sense because I hear a lot of various questions and a lot, and different answers, and just want to make sure, are we going directly for the low bid? What percentages are we applying to cost? What percentages are we applying to qualifications, et cetera? It's really a general statement more than anything else, but I think it would help us, if you're on board, maybe just give us a general sense of how we would go about rating and, ranking consultants and or contractors, vendors.
So I think what I hear
And
you saying, as
instituted.
council member, is it's in the RFP. I think what you're asking us to do is bring it forward and
Just kind
summarize
of,
it. a
so
little
everybody
bit.
has an idea of what we're looking, when we're looking at price, when we're looking at qualifications, what percent distributions we have, so we don't repeat it all the time, and it gives us a sense and a knowledge of how we're going about in selecting our various vendors. Just
Okay,
a
on
thought.
the question before us.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, providing for the cost of providing solid waste and recycling collection services, providing for the method of apportioning the cost of providing solid waste and recycling collection services, providing for revisions to the service fee for solid waste and recycling collection services, confirming initial rate resolution, establishing the method by which the proposed service fee shall be made, providing for equalization, filing, and lien on properties to be assessed, and providing for severability and an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank
Moved
you.
and second. We open up the public hearing on this item. Public hearing is open. Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is closed. Ben, what are we doing here?
This is an increase for the solid waste fee as a result of the decision we had to increase the amount for the contract.
This is 4% fixed for the next 2 years?
Correct. Up to 4%. So if the inflation next year is not there, it won't increase automatically. It's
How
only
much are we paying them now?
per house, it's about
No, total.
900.
around 900, 950. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions before us here
All
on the
those
item?
in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Councilmember Moss? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. The next item is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, selecting U.S. Lubricants LLC for stormwater utility maintenance services in an amount not to exceed $226,792 annually, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Items properly before us. Any questions?
I do.
Issues?
I just have a question. Alternate bids. My understanding with the manager, that was some additional items that they can do for us, and they range from $8,900 all the way up to $356,000. Just wondering what is ranging here. How do we get such different prices in the alternate bids? And is this something that gets added on? I just couldn't, again, follow the rationale here.
Gonna lean on
Because if
John
everybody's
again.
bidding on the same document, you would think they would be a little closer.
That is one of the questions we asked US Loop, and US Loop says that they do most of the repairs and refurbishing of equipment or the material in-house instead of subcontracting it out. So it allowed them to keep the cost down low. Now, the alternate bid too is not something that is going to be regularly used on. It's just that in case there's an emergency or something that needs to replace that is outside of the norm, we are able to utilize it instead of going back out to bids.
So, I mean, maybe this goes back, and I don't want to. Maybe we should have another discussion in another council meeting about procurement. But it seems like something's wrong with the procurement if we're ranging from $8,000 to $356,000 with 4 bidders. Are we writing the correct and very clear information, or is it just that some people just we only can do one thing out of the 100 things you gave us, and that's why mine's 8,000, and the other one can do 100 things, and that's why mine's 356,000. I'm not sure.
We named one attribute for one of them, which you said has in-house, but when you look at the rest of the alternate bids, they also have significant variances within them, 89,000, 35,000. That's almost 3 times more. And then you got the other one, 356,000. So there's something wrong there.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to call it wrong, but highly inconsistent. So I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Just to look at it, that's all, and just make sure we have it.
Yeah. I have similar comments as I did on the one before. I think, the quality of the memo needs to be a little bit better. I read the memo and I couldn't tell that this is a present provider. Is that correct?
It is the present provider.
Yeah. Do you read the memo? You can't tell from that this is a present provider until you go back and check the references. So those kind of things. Same question here. You went to 3 years and 3 years. Is there a reason for that?
I think that's again based on the strength of, we have more evaluation checkpoints in the contracts.
Okay, so again, it wasn't a negotiating piece. It wasn't something that the contractors were looking for. It was just arbitrarily our decision.
Correct.
And the same thing applies here as what the attorney said before, 5-day notice.
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, really quickly on the three-year, I would assume that's in our benefit, because if price escalation or anything happens, we're have the ability to make the option of continuing the contract. But I think that we've discussed this before, is that when we go to the options, we want the manager to come and ask the council that we want to execute that option. Do we have permission? And give the okay, just so that we're all happy that it's not, hey, we want to make a change, but you guys don't want to deal with it. And you're just like, whatever, we just keep going. And we want to have some input in whether we go on that option. I think that we made that clear on some of the other contracts before. So, okay.
Okay. How much, do you know how much we spent on this contract last year?
Check. Do you have that information? It was similar to this, but I don't know the definitive number. It was similar.
Maybe it's in here.
What we spent last year.
Maybe it's in the audited report.
Kind of stuck between both. I know it was. I know we were in the ballpark, but I don't know the exact number.
Okay.
Of this number.
Dow, Jake.
I'll have to get back to you.
Okay. I'm not going to approve any more contracts if we don't have that information. So let's get that done correctly. All right, on the item in front of us.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, selecting and authorizing the village manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with Be Free LLC, DBA, doing business as Free Bee, for on-demand transit services in an amount not to exceed $609,246 annually, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
It's been
Thank
moved
you.
and seconded. Questions on the procurement item?
I just want to make clear that I think we all know this, but to the public, that this money does not come out of our budget directly. This is all coming out of the CITT, and any additional ones that we add on it will come from FDOT grant, correct?
Yes,
FDOT money.
Correct, yeah.
Excellent.
Can you address that? How much you have put in 2 grants to FDOT for this?
That's correct, Mayor and Council. Good evening. We did submit a grant to the FDOT Transit Development Program last year for 2 additional vehicles. We were successful in securing that grant. We haven't done the contracting yet with FDOT because they have not gotten us a contract yet. We do expect that in July for the first of 3 years that we are looking to seek funds from the FDOT. We already did submit a second application this past May for that second year. I'm anticipating that we'll hear from the FDOT sometime this summer. Again, it seems like they're lagging a year. We're assuming that we'll be successful in that second year, and that will, again, cover the cost of 2 additional vehicles, and we can do that up to 3 times. If we see at that point that the ridership warrants those 2 additional vehicles, then we'll have to continue supporting them through CITT funds, and if necessary, some of our own funds. But it might be that CITT, as more money gets brought in to that program, will then be able to cover those 2 additional vehicles completely. If not, we'll have to make a decision as to whether or not it's worth having those 2 additional vehicles. Right now, we're at 6. The 6th one was added about a year ago, again, with increased funds from CITT. And that's where we're at now. We're hoping to bring the total number to 8 within the next couple of months, assuming we could get through the contracting with the DOT.
And then at that point, we'll just continue monitoring the ridership and seeing sort of how high it gets and whether it's worth having those 2 extra vehicles. But right now, the ridership has climbed up to between 7,500 and 8,000 rides per month.
700?
7,500 to 8,000 rides per month.
So the demand is there.
Yeah, the demand's there.
For sure.
We're just trying to see if we can get that demand up to like about 10,000, you know, and whether we can get the ridership, the response times down.
And there's some bus route changes too that might increase that.
Yeah. And so part of the idea is working with Freebie to coordinate with the loss of the B bus going down Harbor and sort of time it out so that those that come off the B bus at Crandon and Harbor can then be supported by Freebie taking them down Harbor to where they need to go. But we did get 2 respondents, and Freebie was the lowest bidder and the most successful respondent.
Quick question on the CITT funding. Is that through the MPO? Where are we getting that funding from?
It's the half penny.
Half penny, okay. So we get a percentage out of all the municipalities throughout
Many
Miami-Dade?
years ago, the county agreed to do a split between the county and the cities. I think it's like an 80-20 split.
Correct.
Right.
That's one of the few benefits of having an increase in population in the census. We got more.
Yeah, right. Okay. So we would have to make a case with the county if we needed additional funding?
No, they don't.
I would imagine that
No,
in every ministry.
it's
based on your population.
Yeah, it's based on
Okay,
population.
got it.
We get what we get.
All right.
Yeah. So far, we've been fortunate in that the monies that we get from CITT has covered all the vehicles that we have.
That's excellent. Good.
It did go up this last year pretty significantly because it is a penny tax on sales. So there's been pretty good activity, economic activity in the county. So not only did we see the increase based on population, but also on sales across the county.
Great, excellent, thank you.
What's we've increased ridership, and that has produced a demand for the units, right?
Well, the demand is there, and as we add vehicles, the ridership keeps going up. What we're working on now is trying to get the wait times down so that people are more inclined to use Freebie as the wait times go down, which then hopefully continues to make ridership go up.
And our costs have gone which way?
I think they've gone up just a little bit. I can't recall exactly how much, but it is a little bit higher.
Have they discontinued the bus on Harbor Drive?
They have not yet, but that's coming as part of the Better Bus program.
Yeah.
The discontinuation of the bus down Harbor is being in a way offset by the fact that during peak hours, instead of having a bus every, I think, half an hour, it's every 10
20
minutes.
They go to every 10 minutes.
Every 10 minutes? I think it's every 10
Well,
minutes.
it's going to go from currently every 20
minutes to 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah, during peak hours.
Crandon Bowl.
Crandon.
Are they going to discontinue Harbor
Yes.
completely?
Yes.
So therefore, your freebie should go up significantly when that happens.
Yeah, we're looking to use the Freebie to then
That's one of the reasons why we want to bump it up 2 more.
pick up the slack from the B bus not going down Harbor.
Makes sense.
I hope 2 is enough.
We'll see, the numbers don't lie.
Any further questions?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is an item regarding Mashta Bridge resolution.
Yes, so,
Mr. Attorney was going to read the title.
If you want to introduce it.
yeah, let me introduce it. So, and Todd's also familiar with this. We have a situation where one of our summer camp groups has in the past used the facilities at Bill Bags from their fishing piers. All their fishing piers are under construction now. So in order for us to grant an exception for them to use for a couple of days our West Mashta Bridge, the item has to come in front of you here in the council. So I think this being an exception, I think is something that we can approve, and hopefully next year they'll have their fishing piers restored. But based on prior actions of the council, it's got to come before you here. So, Mr. Friedman.
Sure. So that's correct. Under section 22-31 of our code, we prohibit fishing on the West Master Road Bridge unless it's approved by resolution of the council. Now, given that this is a time-sensitive matter and this wasn't on the agenda, we can.
Yes, summer camps are starting.
And because summer camps are starting, we can. I can read in a title to a resolution. The council would have to find that it's time sensitive, which it does sound like it is, and we'll have to take a roll call vote. I also think we should allow for a hearing since this wasn't noticed ahead. I have one question, Mayor. What's the name of the entity, or maybe Todd, that we would be allowing? I know it's a summer camp, but isn't it a?
Marine biology camp.
Okay, so authorizing the marine biology camp, and how long do we expect to authorize it for? How long is the camp? A couple weeks?
3 Fridays.
Gerard, you want to come up?
3 Fridays.
3 Fridays?
3 Fridays.
So that's 3 days?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what I would say would be a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, authorizing the Marine Biology Camp to engage in saltwater fishing on the West Master Road Bridge for 3 days during the summer. Okay.
Do we want to define those days?
As well as the times.
It's about an hour and a half each day, around 3 Fridays this summer. 1 in June, 1 July, 1 in August.
Okay.
Leave it open. We'll have control.
Okay.
We'll bring it back in the next meeting, Frank.
All right.
Ignore that, Ed.
So what I would say is that we would authorize the Marine Biology Camp to engage in saltwater fishing on the West Master Bridge for 3 days during the summer for a period of 2 hours per day maximum. And I think that it's appropriate before you, if this is something the council wants to do. I do think you need to determine it's time sensitive in the motion per our rules, wanting a roll call vote, and I think we should open for a hearing if it's something.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I suggest one addition to that is the require that we put out notification so that folks know what's going to happen. I think that's important. Obviously, there are not very many people here. I think it's important to let people know this is something that we've forbidden in the past, so that's something we'll take care of.
Okay.
I don't know whether you want to do it in the resolution or whether it's just implied and we'll take care
implied,
of it.
yeah.
Okay.
Public hearing is open on this matter.
First and
I'll move it. I'll move the, that we should find that it's time sensitive and move the item.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Public hearing is open on this item. You can come forward.
Good evening. I don't know if I have to say my name and all that. I'm a resident here.
I'm sorry, your name, I'm sorry.
My name is Jorge Castañeda. My residence is 485 Hampton Lane, also 640, 642 Fernwood, and also related on another property. I came for another item. I just want to apologize. I just want to ask a question. That item was not open to the public, even though I received a notice like the mayor about that item. That item was about the drainage contract at the beginning.
Yeah, we did open it.
You did open it? I
Yeah.
apologize then. Okay, I'll come back later. Thank you.
No problem.
He was speaking about the stormwater improvements around Allendale.
Oh. Where were we?
You would open it up for
Okay.
a public hearing.
Public hearing is now closed. Okay, so the motion in front of us, including the time-sensitive aspect of it and everything else is discussed, roll call.
Councilmember London?
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Sardinius?
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez?
Yes.
Mayor Roscoe?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Kaplan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Let me do something that got left off from last time on the Sustainability Advisory Board.
Mr. Mayor, you have a tabled item, resolution?
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
Okay. As you recall, we passed this, the Sustainability Advisory Board, and we asked for applicants. We had a very robust number. We had 19 people for 7 slots. People are very interested in this. This is great. We've had a very good showing. So I am asking you to approve the following members: Michael Schmally, Derek DeZuglu, Manny Rionda, Jacqueline Kellogg, Ann Roth, Luis de la Cruz, and Christian Kundal. Those are the people that I'm putting forward here right now. So unless I hear any...
I just had a question, Mayor.
Yes.
The selection process, there were a couple of candidates that came to me, or people particularly interested in joining. I didn't hear their names, but I'm just wondering where
they were all considered.
They were all considered. They were all looked. Okay.
And it was a very difficult decision.
I understand, as everything is.
but what I will tell you is that it's be important that you let those folks know they can go to the meetings, they can participate and do exactly everything. And I'm sure over time, people drop off, and then we can. Those people that go to the meetings and participate are probably the most likely to get selected to go on next time. So
okay,
yeah,
so
I went to the EAB meetings for like a year and a half before I was on the board, and
did.
I was stalking you, Brett.
So when we're talking about a sustainability board,
right?
It will speak about, because I thought we had spoken about this.
We did speak about it, and to include resiliency items also. And so the manager will figure out who's going to be the liaison, but that's definitely something that we all talked about, and we approved the sustainability and the resilience act.
Yeah, I would ask on the sense of resiliency, because there are issues that are require, I think, some sense, and I trust everybody here is qualified and has every knowledge possible too, but that there is, staff is moving forward in a resiliency approach, and there's a lot of technical issues that need to be discussed.
Yes.
I would hate, for things to get caught up into, I don't want to call it lay, but to a certain degree, layman discussions when we're dealing with strictly engineering and planning issues.
Understood, yeah.
I would hate for that to affect and move, and the process that staff's doing a great job on that. And
but I give you an example.
That's all.
Today, the manager and the CRO gave a presentation to the real estate folks, and so, I think, this committee would be the same thing. It would be a stop where, people are able to ask questions and continue to look out for, the welfare of the village, and to look at it from many different angles,
But yes, everybody conscious that we're streamlining a very important program, and then that's all I'm just asking, to just make sure that we have the right systems and process in place. So.
Okay, you want to go back to the wordsmithing that Mr. Friedman made?
Okay. Well, we both had competing whereas clauses that were pretty close. Let me just pull up mine here again.
First in a second to untable.
And I want to say Roger did a good job helping too on this. So we had discussed, and we can still wordsmith it, but saying, whereas the constraints on infrastructure and services that existed when the density cap was adopted through ordinance number 2012-10 not only continue to exist, but have intensified, and accordingly the density cap remains in the best interests of the residents of the village.
That's
okay.
I like it. That's fun.
Okay. I think Councilmember Sarnias wasn't here. Just for your benefit, this was on item, I think, was it 10C? That was 8C that was tabled on the density cap, and we discussed bringing back a whereas clause to address current conditions.
Great.
Okay, on the item before us, all those in favor?
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, can we go to Mr. Moss's item now.
Do you want to do public comments really quick? Just, I think there's somebody that wanted to speak, maybe.
Okay.
Just before
Yeah, or second public comments.
the second one.
All right, we can do that.
Just really quick.
Public comments are open once again. Give it a shot.
I mainly came for the drainage, but I found
Your name and address, I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
Your name and address, sorry.
Jorge Castañeda, 485 Hampton Lane.
Thank you.
I came mainly for the drainage, but I found some things that I can make a comment regarding your concern about the zoning. I'm commercial resident, but I'm a contractor too. In other municipalities, when I'm gonna do a work, they ask us to send some type of notification to the neighbors so they can know. They can be as simple as a certified letter that if there is a problem with us working, you contact the appropriate contact. So they can come here with that, that they were notified. That's the U type of, around it.
Yes.
So I also came for the drainage because I received a notice like him, and I went yesterday to the city to try to get some information. I've been trying to get involved and help the city from my experience. I've been in the workshops, and I found interesting that we're looking at big numbers, millions of dollars, like that contract, and just a comment, we spend a lot of money in little money. I don't want to disregard the other things, but this was, and even today, it was supposed to be open. The discussion was short compared to the other one. I don't know if you guys have a lot more information than I do, but I was very interested in that. One of the things, I really like that because I've been living here for 20 years and I see a lot of planning, a lot of this, a lot of workshop, and I actually don't see the works. In my personal, not scientific information, I think a lot of the drainage can be resolved with 20%, 80% of the problem can be resolved with 20% of the money. I'm pro spending money, but I know the business, and it's not a business where people can benefit. It's pipes under, and people don't see a benefit. It helps because I'm a person that when it rains, I cannot walk my dog because I have 2 legs.
Me too.
So but those things can be simple, and we can save 80% something in that number, and I'd rather spend that money in the city in parks where people can enjoy. So I would like to get involved more so we can do more of those things because you see that at the end we will save a lot of money.
Anybody can save us money. We're here to listen.
My man.
Yeah, we just established a sustainability committee. You're more than welcome to come in and sit there and just listen and.
Yeah, for example, sorry to apologize, when I came yesterday and I found there's some kind of map, they have it. So 2 point was the area on one of my properties was not included. And they were very helpful here because that area, you can see it from the parking lot of the village. And it was not included in that contract that it was. So I would like to know how that was the process, where something that as clearly as people that come here is in Fernwood. So miss that opportunity. And you see the map, and then that's missing.
What answer did they give you?
What?
What answer did they give you, how they determined what properties are going to be included?
They didn't know.
They didn't know, okay.
But at least, for example, I got something good about it because there is a drainage around 100 feet. That's the one that is overflow that was the lake created. And you have a drainage in the corner around the Winn-Dixie. So I assume that system, one is overflowed, the other system is not helping the other one. They told me that basically it might be connected, which doesn't make sense. But, they're going to call somebody to come and put something like cameras to see, because according to the records that people were not sure, they are connected. But I cannot see, you step here, you see the lake there, and in front of this drainage, there's no water. So how can this system not helping the other one?
Well, I was told, maybe it's not correct, when they put in the sewers, sanitary sewers, they went through a lot of these storm sewers, and so a lot of storm sewer pipes have been broken, have not been reconnected, and the water goes into the ground in one place because it's not directly at the other storm sewer pipe. It's hard to believe, but somebody with knowledge of the system was telling me that.
Well, it makes sense because it might be flooded, and then that's the reason you have to go with cameras and then go and
That would
study.
tell you.
Yeah, so.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, you mentioned you live on Hampton, is that right?
Excuse me?
You said
485.
Hampton, you said you live on Hampton?
Yeah, and the 400 block.
Thank you.
So there is a lake in front of the Hampton Park, and there is obviously where it's going, McIntyre and all that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to
Which item? I
take,
have like
take your
three.
seawall.
Seawall one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So I put this on the agenda, but I moved it over to the managers because the manager said he can do it within his report based on the title.
Oh, we can
barrier
tag team
ordinance.
it here.
Yeah, and you know I have a lot of concerns with it, but I know that the manager is going around having public meetings, getting input from the public, and I know that there's one coming up. But obviously, I'm getting many calls from people who are concerned. And rightfully so, because it was written as an ordinance, one that none of us have, you know, we're learning at the same time the public is learning about this as well. So, you know, I've had long discussions with the manager about this. He asked that maybe we can go into a deep discussion about this policy-wise in July so he can finish getting some public input and coming back with something. And I told him, hopefully not a not an ordinance, but just come back with some information because I think that we're missing the discussion is what this council says that they want to do or don't want to do, and that will give direction. But my bigger concern was that are we spending, you know, is our administration spending too much time on this if this is not something that we are interested or not interested into? So I said, okay, we'll wait till July, but I definitely want the manager to at least clarify to the public that this ordinance is not being pushed right now. It's more of a talking, discussion, informational with the concerns so they can come back to us and tell us what the concerns are, what some recommendations are, and we decide whether this is even anything we want to pursue right now or not.
Okay.
Joe?
Mr. Manager, you were gonna,
Sure, I'll start, and if Roland would come up too as well. So, you know, we have to start from somewhere. You know, you definitely don't want to start from a blank slate because that creates chaos. So, you know, we initially drafted and we made it very clear that it was a draft ordinance, and with the intent to begin to have a communication with the community. And the original ordinance had a single approach, which was very well researched by our consultant Moffitt and Nickel, who's done this locally, probably about 8 different municipalities. Taking consideration, you know, all the local science and projections for South Florida. We've had a chance now to have 2 meetings. One was not as well attended as we would like. We did get some feedback during that time period, but we felt that we did not get out to enough people who live in a very, you know, special part of our community. There's 278 people who have property, mostly residences, on our Bayside waterfront, and we knew that they would be difficult to get to. So what we decided is instead of doing it at the community center, we would do kind of a grassroots approach, reach out to different homeowners on the on those properties. And Carlos de la Cruz, I think I see him here. Yes, he's still here. Was gracious enough to offer the time to do it or the place to do it in his home. I think we had 32 people there. So obviously the numbers are going up. We have another meeting coming up next week on June 13th. During that meeting at the Yacht Club, and during that meeting we held at Carlos's house, there was some very good discussion back and forth. Thought it was very interesting, different people's ideas. And what we did is we were able to take in an additional idea instead of just basing it on time and the projection of the NOAA intermediate high. One of the suggestions was also to tie it to actual sea level rise. So we've done the numbers, and Rowan could probably give you more details on that. And then thirdly, we asked our consultant to go out and find other potential options that are out there. And I believe it was Sunny Isles or Surfside that they also came up with another one. So right now we're in the research phase. And I think what we've done, you know, by initially starting this process is we've started the conversation, which is what we wanted to do. And so we continue to have that conversation. We'll see how it comes out next week, and then we'll be happy to come back in July to give a report to the council.
When this came up, I guess, a few months ago, when you're proposing it, back then I said it doesn't make any sense it doesn't make any sense right now, because if we're worried we're contributing or have to pay $750,000 of a $3 million study that the Army Corps of Engineers is going to do, which is going to probably take 2-3 years to get it done, and they will then come back and say, this is what you have to do if we're going to consider you for the entire beachfront and everything else. And it might be different than what your ordinance says. So why are we proposing an ordinance today? What I proposed before, yes, there's a potential that the seawalls would have to go up. And we should notify anybody who is going to be building a new seawall or replacing a seawall that maybe this is going to happen. So therefore, it might go to 6, 8, whatever the number is going to be. So sink it deeper today so you can add on later if you have to. And other than that, why are we going ahead and getting everybody concerned? You're saying it's research. You're telling people this is an ordinance we're considering passing. That's not research. It never came before us. This is something you decided to do, and all with all the good intentions. I'm not saying anything wrong, but to me, it's premature. It doesn't make sense to do it today if we're going to be dependent on the Army Corps of Engineers, because they're basically going to tell us what to do. We don't have to do what they tell us what to do, but they don't have to include us in the beach either.
Well, I think you bring up two things. I think having a conversation is never premature. I think communicating with the community is always important. And sometimes, we get the flip side as we go to the community too late. So in this case, we started to draft this up. We had information from other communities, and we started the conversation. I also want to make sure it's distinctly clear the difference between what a seawall ordinance does or a tidal barrier, flood barrier ordinance does. It addresses sea level rise and then the tide, which is very specific to property on the shoreline. What the Corps of Engineers is coming in is looking at storm surge capability. Are the two connected? Sure, they're somewhat connected, and obviously before we go too far down the road, we want to hear what they have to say, but I want to make sure the clear difference between the two, that one is for sea level rise and one is to address storm surge.
So if one of them comes out at +6 I'll just pull a number out, and they come back and say +7, that okay, our +6 might be for what we're talking about, but since they have a +7, we're going to have to go to a +7.
Could I just clarify what the Army Corps is likely going to be presenting us with are not modifications to be made to private properties, but rather what could be done at a much broader scale, and again, to address storm surge. They're not going to come out with a recommendation for whether a seawall should be at 6, 7, 6.5, 7.2. It's going to be a much bigger solution.
What do you think they come up with?
I'm not even going to fathom a guess, because we're not at that point with the Army Corps. If you don't know that they're going to come up with,
they could come up with seawalls with various heights.
Well, in truth, I would respectfully disagree, because in all the discussions that we've had with them, it's never gone down that road. So it's probably it's very unlikely. And however, I would reiterate what the manager is saying is that this tidal barrier ordinance that is being considered is really to deal with the problem of tidal effects, not storm surge effects, and it's also being motivated and driven by the fact that people who are renovating their seawalls or building new seawalls are reaching out to us and seeking guidance as to what they should make their seawall crest heights, or whether or not they even should do a seawall and rather do something else to be protective of their property, their neighbor's property, and the right-of-way. So it's a combination of things that is motivating us looking into this, and we're doing it in the context of a lot of other municipalities that are facing the same issues and putting forward guidance on their tidal flood barriers and their seawall crest heights. This is not something that we are doing uniquely because we're so innovative and proactive, but we're actually sort of in line with a lot of what's going on around us, City of Miami, Miami-Dade County, and their flood ordinance and the criteria that they set in that, Miami Beach, North Bay Village. A lot of municipalities, just about all coastal municipalities, are grappling with what to do regarding seawalls because people are rebuilding their seawalls that are deteriorated or putting in new seawalls. So that's it's not just coming out of
That's what I'm saying. Let me address that.
Hold on.
Can I address that point he's coming up with?
Yeah.
Real quickly. So basically, the ratio is about 2 to 1, I think. In other words, you're going to sink twice as much as you're going to have above the water line?
I don't engineer seawalls, so I'm not going to get into
Okay.
the ratios of what they need
It's
to
been a
be.
while since I've been a seawall, but normally, if I remember correctly, if you wanted 8, you got to go down 4. So my question is, my suggestion is this. Let's say you're picking up a number from Muffet and Nichols and says +7. So let's say normally they would be going to 6. So they have to go down an extra 6 inches now if it's going to be 7 later. It's a hell of a sight cheaper to do that and not go up to their number if it doesn't have to go to that number, because then they can add on later rather than picking the whole seawall up. So all I'm saying is notify people that this is something that might happen, could happen, and this might be the number. But so if you want to protect yourself and you're building a seawall today, go down an extra foot, which will give you an extra 2 feet, or 3 feet, whatever that number is going to be, whatever you think the maximum number is going to be, even higher than maybe you think it is today. So they go down deeper, so they go up higher without ripping out the seawall, and it's not expensive to do. And that's a notification we should be giving people who want to build seawalls today or rebuild seawalls. And the ordinance is something that, hey, you're going to pass, you might not pass, but you might have to do this. So if you're going to do this, just put the seawall down deeper. That's all.
I think you can interpret from the seawall ordinance that, in fact, you should do that, because what we do is we actually have a 2-step approach. First one is to get to a certain height in 2035, which would then also require you to go to an additional height. So if you know you have to go to a certain height, any engineer who would come in would tell you that you would have to do exactly what you're saying. So
we could tell them that.
Okay.
Well, exactly, and that's why it's in the ordinance, or in the draft ordinance. But we're doing what you're saying. But I think let's pull back from that, because we have pulled back from that, and we want to make sure that we have a communication and coordination with the community on where we want to go next. But from the engineering perspective, we are doing what you're saying. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Okay.
I'm trying to say to people, this is what's going to happen if you don't do this, and then we change it later. Since you're going to build a seawall today, you might have to build a new seawall. You might have to pull the old seawall out if you don't do it today. So sink it deeper so you can go to the maximum height later. That's all I'm saying. And then when you have an ordinance, when you have further knowledge, because maybe the number you have from Moffett and Nichols is too low, and you're going to have to go higher. So that's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Mr. Moss.
Yeah, I mean, since we're having somewhat of this discussion, and maybe we can leave some of it later, but I mean, I can tell you my personal feeling that this is probably the lowest priority of all the resiliency, things that we have on the plate, for a couple of reasons. One, you're talking about, oh, you build a new seawall, maybe you have to raise it, but we have obviously shown, and at least this is the good, what you're saying, that we went through this process and we understand this, is that that's not the only way that you can create a flood barrier. You can build a berm, you can build another wall on your property, you can do all kinds of other things in order to protect, even though you've already built a brand new seawall. So there's many other ways that people can deal with this, but I still don't see that there's any rush at this moment to start passing policy on flood barrier for sea level rise that's happening very gradually over many years, with models that all say that sea level rise is happening. And I'm not debating whether sea level rise is happening or not, but you can definitely see that from model to model, there's a huge variation of how much it's going to, at what rate is actually happening, which, in 10 years we'll know better. And in 20 years we'll know even better. And people won't let nobody's going to let their property start flooding. And if they do, then we can pass ordinance that you have a year to fix it. I don't care how you fix it, because now you're causing a problem for us. But that can be happening 30 years from now. And we're talking about today. At least we're having the discussion. But from my standpoint, I don't see this as, hey, we have to do this right now. Secondly, when we first started talking about this, I was under the impression that the grant that we were going to try to receive from the Army Corps of Engineers had some way in ties of what we're doing with a seawall ordinance. But talking to Steve, it's not connected directly to that. So again, that was kind of, oh man, we have to come up with something because of this. And then I find out, no, they're not directly connected. Yes, it could help indirectly in some way, but they're really not directly connected. I mean, even if sea levels happen, as it's happening and it's going over seawalls, even Miami-Dade County is going to start raising the number, and people are going to have to start raising by that code, which is the code we follow today. So I'm not really sure if it's like kind of putting the helmet on top of another helmet. It's like, do we need to do this right now?
I may add too. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No. We're dealing with an issue of high uncertainty here. Very, very high uncertainty with the projections of sea level rise, the politics behind sea level rise, the economics behind sea level rise. And I think that to a certain degree, it makes a lot of sense to also see where the counties go on in a much regional scale. This is really a regional issue when you're talking about it, and also from the standpoint of where the federal government stands on this, because it's a coastal issue. And for us, I think to a degree, to set a fixed elevation at this point without a true horizon or without an understanding, I think it's a little bit premature. I would agree with that. And I would also take into consideration not just the elevation of the water with the cap maybe, but also the seepage of the groundwater is coming below. Because at the end of the day, the water is putting some pressure and it's coming right below the seawall and it's coming out on the other side. So, you know, the magnitude of the issue is very high, and I think it warrants further debate, further understanding, and horizons that we can really grapple with and understand also with the backing of the county. I just don't see us setting elevations at this point or putting, you know, specific points. I kind of agree with both of you in a way, but I think we need to understand what we're dealing with first and how we're going to manage it. Seepage underwater is what really concerns me more than the water that may be coming over the top, because the water does come from the bottom. Any dam, any designer that designs dams or water retention systems will tell you that. The issue is the groundwater more than anything else. So I think from the standpoint of true engineering solutions at this point, I would look below ground. I would look at ways of minimizing that and ways of reducing the seepage of the groundwater that's coming above us. It's called a flood barrier.
Mayor, I'd just like to add, to clarify a point, part of the motivation behind this is also the fact that we're modifying outfalls. Outfalls discharge from seawalls, which will then require modifications to the seawall. And then also we'll have to address what to do adjacent to the part of the seawall that has been modified per the modification to the outfall. Those outfalls are being modified as we go through this stormwater upgrade that we've already started with K8, which has 3 outfalls. So that's also a reason why this has come up. So while I understand what you're saying about this is not necessarily a priority, in a way, it's being motivated because there is a priority that is going to require dealing with the outfalls and the seawalls. There's that. The other thing that I'd just like to add is the county did recently pass its flood criteria for unincorporated Dade, and it does actually set a crest elevation countywide of 6 feet with an additional 5 inches, taking the crest to 6.5 feet, which is essentially what we were using as a guide. City of Miami selected 6. City of Miami Beach selected 5.7 because they were basing it off of a previous version of the Southeast Florida Climate Change Compact's recommendations, which at the time made 5.7 work, but actually now is outdated. So I understand what you're saying. I understand the whole seepage issue as well. Every tidal flood barrier and every seawall that is on the coast is got that same issue of groundwater.
I mean, we'll eventually see. Sorry to interrupt you, but we'll eventually know through an established horizon of 10 to 20 years where the sea level may be rising or not. But again, my concern is below that.
Understood.
Because it's like anything, you know. Look at the Hoover Dam. Anybody that's designed a dam will tell you that the issue is the groundwater that's coming below.
The groundwater. No seawall is going to address the groundwater issue.
It's a complex construction, but it does happen.
Yeah, just wanted
to finish here.
Yeah, I was just going to say for the outfall, I understand that. Maybe the simple solution is wherever there's an outfall, they just need to be built deep enough that they can go higher in the future. Doesn't have to be an ordinance. We can just tell people in that little section, that's what you do. And second, I put this on as a discussion item for July's meeting. I think that if this council could do a little bit of research in the next month to get a feeling of where you are, let the report come back from the manager. And I think we should have a good discussion about this and give direction to them. Do they need to spend more time on this now? Do we want to come back to this in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, and move on? Because I don't like this idea of this thing lingering out there, and you got people like, what's going on with my property? Am I going to have to build a 4-foot wall in my backyard all of a sudden? And people are worried about it. And I think that we need to just tell people where this board stands, because wherever this board stands, where we make the policy, they're going to execute that. Yeah. So I think that I'll bring that back and maybe we can give some
Let's
direction.
bring that. This is.
The only thing I'd like to add, I think it's our duty to tell the people who are building seawalls today or rebuilding seawalls today that there's a potential, where you say 6.5, 7, whatever the number is going to be, that this could
So
be
they can
the
make their
number,
own decision.
and make sure it's sunk deep enough to take care of that. That's all.
Sure. That's fine.
It's no
We'll make
big deal
that.
to
We'll
do
make that
today.
recommendation.
No, I think Councilmember London kind of hit what I wanted to say is, are we moving too fast, 5, 10 years? I mean, I think we as government do have a duty to tell, we have the research, we have the ability to go back and understand this. And if it's the guidance, if it's the council's will, we'll just do more of a recommendation approach as opposed to a requirement approach. But at some time as we go forward, and I think we've found some pretty good ideas, based on maybe we tie it to actual sea level rise, vice, the projection. Although the projection seems to be fairly accurate, but maybe we do it to actual sea level rise vice the projection itself.
A recommendation that they should do that, and if they don't do that, and we now say it has to be 2 feet higher for whatever number it's going to be,
They have to figure
they're
it
going to
out.
have to do that. If they don't do it, they're going to have to put a new seawall at their expense.
I think the public, from my opinion, there needs to be a sense of, we're not going to be establishing a fixed elevation right now.
No,
That
I'm
would
not
be
saying that.
ridiculous to do
I'm
that
not
at
saying
this
that.
point. Yeah, no.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
for whatever, what's the current number?
6.5.
Now, that's the new number.
No.
What's
It's
the
like
old
3, 4.
I just think that
There's
is.
no,
the current
there's
requirement.
no,
There's no requirement.
there's no required height at this
Okay,
point.
let's say-
People can
let's
do
say
whatever
people
they
are
The
want.
county doesn't have. I thought they have a minimum height.
No, they're beginning to, and Chad's looking at it right now, but it's beginning to establish criteria for roadways and shorelines. It is at 6.5. It's going to come probably pretty soon, so we need to be ready for that.
Actually, I think it's already
Well, I'm
passed.
saying-
That sounds like a
The
disaster.
county-
Okay, folks.
That's Miami Beach again.
Yeah.
Raising the roads 3 feet.
Let's,
100 years from now.
I'm just saying, that whatever it is, let's just say 6.5, 7, make a seawall deep enough today, so you can add on to it later if you don't want to do it today.
4 feet down.
To come up to that number. And if you don't do that, then you're gonna have to have the seawall, either do it then or pull it out.
Or build a berm.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
I think the answer, I know the answer, but I want to make sure. We've talked on other occasions about our joinder in, larger strategic partnerships with the county and the Army Corps' expectations relative to bayside protection. With all that afoot, so to speak, they're not expecting or requiring an ordinance from us at this point.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
From last time, Mr. Vasquez, we moved back your item. Can you want to address it?
The stormwater regulations?
Stormwater regulations, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this point because I did have a discussion with staff. My understanding is, and I'll ask the village attorney on it, my understanding is that right now the stormwater regulations require that every individual properties retain their own drainage, and I think that follows with county standards. Is that correct? I think each property owner must treat, retain, and dispose of their individual drainage.
Up to, what is it, 100-year flood or
100-year
whatever it
flood,
is,
25,
yes.
whatever it may
Yes.
be. Okay, when you put that in the context of where we're at, we're Barrier Island. When the water comes in, there's no difference between the watersheds. There is no watershed divide. The water comes in and it overflows. It gets on the roads. It gets into people's properties. I think that may have been a noble approach at one time. I don't know when, because we've always been a barrier island. We've always flooded. So the whole, to me, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense to dictate that each property owner, and this I brought up when we were having the presentation at the entrance. There were some issues about, containing and retaining their own drainage. And I'm not saying we go out there and we change the county regulations, but we should move in that direction, and we should put some common sense into that particular component, because we're asking property owners and individuals and businesses to handle their own drainage when we know perfectly well when it rains, the water goes everywhere. And I'm not suggesting that we also pay for every property, but we are all in it together. We're an island. Everybody, the water is everywhere. The water cannot physically and logically be retained individually by each property owner. And I don't know what the solution is, and I'm not sure how the county would look at this, but this is, to me, this is one of those old regulations that it's there and people just comply with it because they have to comply with it and they won't put any more gray matter into it. I think we have to do something about it. I don't know, Mr. Manager, what we would do when it relates to talking with the county and everything like that, or finding a way, but I think there has to be an approach that makes sense, because I can see people spending a lot of money in their properties or businesses having to retain a supposedly 25-year 3-day storm, that they're not going to be able to do that, because unless they're higher than other properties, they can do that, but they won't be able to retain it because it's going to overflow into somebody else's property. So I think we need to have a unified approach to our drainage that is village-wide, that we take in that component, we treat it and dispose the drainage village-wide. Now, does that translate into some form of a, I don't know, a proportion from each property owner? I don't know. I don't know, but I think there has to be some common sense to this, because otherwise, I think we're just kind of it doesn't make sense in my opinion. So with that.
Well, I think one of the difficulties on this is obviously the public versus private property, right? And I think that's something that, we're not going to solve this tonight. I think maybe you and I can sit down and talk about this in more detail.
Yeah.
But, and perhaps we need the lawyer as well, because obviously mixing those two becomes the issue.
I understand.
And so maybe we have a conversation offline to really understand. Look, in a perfect world, we all take care of each other's water, right? And right now we have private versus public requirements, and maybe there's a way we can figure out to work around that.
And again, this is not something to dictate any policy or set any rules or anything like that, but I think it's something that behooves all of us to understand well when we're going about and creating a drainage system and going out there with a capital program that's going to invest a lot of money and then that's going to handle most of the drainage that's coming in and being generated in the village. But at the same time, we're putting the burden on property owners to develop these systems that we know perfectly well are not going to work from the beginning. That's just my comment. This is a gentleman has been raising his arm and his hand and just.
Okay, we got to keep going.
Yeah.
Seeing no other comments, Mr. Moss, on your item number 3.
Yeah, so review and recommendation changes to the site plan review criteria and the site plan review process. After we just went through the entry block and even St. Agnes and other large projects that have come through, I do this all the time for a living, right? We have to go through this process, and Key Biscayne has the easiest process I've ever seen. You just go straight through, and it's one meeting. People are just looking at this for a couple of days, and that's it. And it gives very little time for the public to be aware of what's happening. It gives very little time for us to kind of understand what's happening. So what I'm asking to this council, if you guys would be okay to allow me to work with Chad, to work with Jeremy, to sit down with them and review our process, because I still believe that there should be at least a 2-step process where they would come and present to us what they want to do, and they would come back at least 30 days later, and then they would present it, and that would be a vote. Most municipalities, you have to go through another elected or appointed review board, and then you would have to go through the commission, so it goes through many steps. I don't want to make it too difficult, but I think that giving at least a 30-day time for us to hear it, ask questions without, they're not going to be denied right there on the spot, so we can ask questions, and they say, maybe we can meet with you next week, you can sit down and talk, they can formulate some stuff, come back, you can talk to your constituents about it, then you can make a better informed decision. A lot of these site plan approvals, just so you know, that there's very few buildings that we have along, especially our commercial areas, and one change in them can drastically change the characteristic of Key Biscayne. So I think that this kind of sensitivity is important to go through this process. So I would like to at least look at it, come back maybe with some recommendations, see if you guys like it, you don't. But I don't want to spend their time without your permission. That's okay.
I'm not only okay with it, I urgently request that we do exactly that.
Okay.
Here.
Mr. London?
Absolutely.
Mr. London?
You got our blessing.
I know it's your birthday, but can you...
Happy birthday.
Is it? Not until
Not yet.
Thursday.
All right.
Close.
I'd rather not have the.
Closer, should we sing?
Rather forget it. Number 83.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
38.
What?
38. Just reverse it.
Yeah, 38.
So you guys are okay with it? All right. I'll work on this.
So we welcome the opportunity to do it.
Appreciate it.
Consensus of council, okay.
When you do this, one thought to include is how the comp plan factors into the analysis. We didn't have that presentation to the extent that I remember how the entry block came forward. We had to work that out ourselves.
Will do.
Okay, Mr. London.
Yes, sir.
Your item.
Securing the beach park after sundown.
Right now, the beach park, as you probably know, has people coming in the evening there, uninvited guests. It's supposed to be closed at sundown, and now it is closed, but doesn't keep anybody out. They can get in the gate, there's the fences, etc. There's lights on in the bathrooms, even though it's closed, there's lights on in the bathrooms at night, which makes no sense if the place is closed. So what I proposed is, number one, having time-sensitive locks. So basically, the lock and the gate to go in there, at whatever sundown is, or an hour after sundown, it's locked, so people can't use their card to get in there. Number two, bathrooms, the same thing, time-sensitive locks. In the evening, when the place is closed, the bathrooms are closed. Number three, the fence and everything else is fixed, because now people can get in there. It doesn't matter, we put locks there. So secure the place from the street side. Number five, go ahead and put in signs about trespassing and violations on the beach side and the regular side, so people aren't going in at night, having parties, disturbing people. And I guess number six is put a security camera, security beam across the beach side, because they don't see another problem at the, what's it called, the beach club. It's along our beach park. There doesn't seem to be a problem. People don't go in there. So until, and these are the security items I'm suggesting, and I asked the manager to prepare it, try and get a cost on doing this so we can move forward with it. Have you ever get any cost on that?
Not yet. Not yet. I want to hear the discussion at the council first before we went forward.
Okay, well.
Okay, so.
I mean, how can they decide whether they want to do it? They don't know how much it's going to cost.
Okay, but wait. So did you have a conversation with the police chief, with the manager? Is this all feasible?
I know they make locks. They know locks work on time. Okay. That's feasible. It's available.
Okay, but you haven't had that conversation.
I didn't,
okay.
No.
All right. Can you?
I did talk to. Well, of course, there could be a couple more policemen. You told me there at night. I think it's.
I think though, I'll let Chief Souza take over in a second. But I think, and Ed, I'd like you to help us with, maybe you have other information that we don't have. But I mean, you really kind of define the problem, because we don't really have that much activity down there. Chief can kind of tell you more about that. But obviously, you want to impact the activity on what kind of investment you want to make, and I'll let Chief address that.
So, good evening, Mayor, Council, and thank you. This is a park that is included 4 to 5 times a night, park checks that we do routinely. We take signals every time we go there. As the manager indicated, our contact is extremely limited. You are correct, Council Member London, in that they have fixed the fence there. That's been a big improvement. As far as the gate, maybe we can improve the lock. You're never going to keep people out of that park, because they're accessing it from the beach when we encounter them. And the people we're encountering in the park, most of them aren't Key Biscayne residents, the minimal amount, right? So I can't think, we've maybe trespass warned in the last month off the top of my head there, 2 people. So the issue isn't, if there's more details, I would love it. It is part of our regular patrols. We have more issues in the entry area of the Key off of Ocean Lane Drive than we do down there, and we have included it. I am meeting the concerned resident next Tuesday, I think, at their residence. I've been in contact with them, and they said there's been a big improvement, like you said, at the beach club, and now their concern is Beach Park. But we've also been in constant communication. They have my phone number, email, and text message.
No, the reason you say about the beach, I proposed a beam going across the beach. So when they did, so at sundown or whatever, that beam would go off. When somebody walked through the beam, either lights would go on, an audible warning going, you're trespassing. And you're also supposedly putting cameras there, I understand. So when you have the cameras and you have the beam and you have the locks, it should be much more secure than it is today.
So let me address the signage first. There is signage there right now that as soon as you get from the sand onto the pathway that says you're trespassing, it has the times. I've never seen one of these beams. We can look into it. I worked in a coastal community before. I'm not saying it can't be done. And in order to trespass someone in the state of Florida, before you can put them under legal arrest, you do have to give them a warning the first time. You just can't arrest them because they're there.
Okay.
So there is requirements that go into it. Like, you know, I'm more than willing to work with them, and the camera system has begun installation there. The fiber has been run, so I anticipate that hopefully being done by the end of this month, and that'll give us another vantage point.
Is the sign lit up?
Is the sign?
And the trespassing sign at night on the beach side, is it lit?
Probably not because of
You
turtles.
can't because of turtles.
I'm not saying lit to broadcast over the area.
I mean, I've been there at night. The manager and I walked it a month and a half ago when we were out at night in the village, and I walked it. The sign is visible. It's not like you can't read it and can't see it. It's a yellow sign. It's clear to me, but we can always look at it.
I mean, can somebody see it on a dark night?
Yeah, I believe you can.
So it doesn't need a light?
I don't think it needs a light.
Okay.
So I think, Councilmember, I think your point is well taken, and we'll take a look at security. I think the locks make a whole lot of sense. As you know, the cameras are going in.
Great.
We'll verify to make sure the signs are visible from all sites, from all locations, excuse me. And obviously we'll continue to do the patrols.
Put a time lock on, that's all the things.
Yeah.
I know you're saying mainly people coming from the beach side, but now that you fixed the fence, that definitely should help, obviously.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Before they could just come right in. So it didn't matter what lock you had. But I'm saying if you did that, put the time locks on there, call a security company, tell them this is what you want. They have beams all the time for security. And so you ask them about a beam. What's going to cost?
We will look into the beams. I heard Indian Creek has done those, so maybe we can be like Indian Creek and have them surrounding our village as well.
Chief, can I just ask you this? I'm guessing that there's a certain age demographic that's going to the park. Have we noticed an uptick?
You mean people like Ed?
No, I mean people that Ed doesn't want to listen to at the beach. Have we seen an uptick in like kids on the beach at night because of the additional access points?
I don't think we can attribute it to the additional.
Like, are you
access
seeing
points.
them at the end of?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing an uptick of juvenile activity throughout the village, not just the beach. You know, with school ending this week, I do think that a lot of our children leave for the summer, but the last 4 to 5 weeks have been very, very busy on the weekends.
End of year celebrations.
And I think, your question was, do the access points increase it? I think what we see, and Chief, you make sure I'm correct on this, is a lot of them come in from Crandon Park. And that's the easiest place for them to come.
The manager is 100% correct. The majority of the kids that we are encountering, it appears that they're coming from Crandon Park, and I'd say 95% plus are non-key residents.
That's the hot spot.
Yes.
North side of the beach, yes.
Okay. Does that work for you, Ed?
To get it done, it works for me.
All right.
Thank you.
I put on here, we don't need to do it because I'm sure you want to get to finish the agenda here. But in your packet is 6 months worth of our budget. And Benjamin, just in 2 words, can you just talk about
2 words.
2 words, man. Right on.
About our 6 months?
Thank you.
It's good.
It's great.
It is great. All good.
All good.
No, if I could just highlight real quickly, I know it's late into the night. Revenue side, I think we're doing strong. Obviously, economic activity has been better than even budgeted. It came up during the conversation about the freebies and the CITT that's based on sales tax. Our state revenue share of sales tax has also been strong. One of the biggest differences, actual to budget, would be interest income. We put the budget together last summer. I don't think any of us anticipated interest rates being above 5% where they are now. So we're obviously taking advantage of those strong interest rates with the assets we have, and obviously paying our debt at a much lower rate. So we're paying at about 1.2, and we're receiving 5%. So there's a big delta between the two. So we're in a strong financial position. You notice in the audit that all of our cash balances, our fund balances went up. On the expenditure side, we're trending just about where we should be after 6 months, or about halfway through the year. In another 3 months, we'll have a better indication kind of where we'll be at year end as we get more months you have under your belt, the better projection you have. It helps us develop our fiscal year 24 budget as well, with all the directors are doing now. And Steve and I will be meeting with all of them to kind of go over projections for next year and any new incentives or initiatives and what those will cost. And then lastly, you guys all saw my email last week. We got word from Miami-Dade County property appraisers that our value went up by 8.8% for next year.
How did we do compared to our other coastal cities?
So that's one of the surprises. Miami-Dade County as a whole went up about 12%. So I noticed obviously we were under county-wide. The manager and I were looking at some of just coastal cities to see if we could kind of segregate a similar trend going on. And it's really all over the place. Coastal cities in general went up about, I'd say 10.5%, 11%, so lower than the county average. It's probably too early to start making predictions as to why, but as we get the more detailed, granular data on our parcels, I'll be studying it, looking at sales data, making sure the PA's office is capturing kind of all the sales that we're seeing and at those high numbers to make sure we're getting all the value that we're entitled to.
Yeah, but I would think that it's something that may affect it is we don't have a large commercial and hotel district like some of these other cities have, and I think a lot of that can sway, move this in a
so definitely on new construction.
To other cities, our new construction isn't.
Yeah. I mean, people are building like crazy in some areas. We don't have that.
I think Medley went up 50%.
There was an annexation there. That's why.
What?
There was an annexation there. No city's going up 50% without a.
I saw that.
Okay.
Great. This is crazy.
Yes. Sweetwater similarly last year had an annexation.
Doral went up tremendously also.
Yeah.
But these people are building
crazy
residential, commercial, everything.
Crazy.
Yeah, they're turning industrial into tall buildings. So.
Okay. Thank you. It's more than 2 words, but it was.
It's like about 500 over, but you're right.
Mr. Manager, you want to do the athletic program and fields recommendation? We left that from last time.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. There was one more discussion item. Resilient and infrastructure projects. Councilmember Moss.
She snuck that in there.
Snuck it in there at the beginning. All right, so I had to put this on because I wasn't planning on putting this on the agenda, but this is stuff that I lose sleep over. I mean, I really do. I go to bed and I just stay up thinking about this. And we have the manager here that can get things done for sure. He takes the ball and he runs at 100 miles an hour, and we know this is the right guy. But at the same time, I don't remember us having a good conversation on giving that what direction we want him to run the ball with, right? And when it comes to these resiliency projects, these infrastructure projects that we're looking at that are enormous. And, a lot of this came up with this Black and Veatch, that proposal, that work order that came in front of us. And I was like, man, we have to take a deep breath and stop for a second and figure out what we want to do here. And, I've sent an email and I've met with Steve, and, he's been telling us this idea of dig once approach, which is an approach that works, and it sounds very reasonable and sounds smart. But at the same time, I'm very hesitant on whether that is the approach that we as a community want to take or not. And I think we have to have that, that discussion, because we have to be careful that we don't get into a situation where we're trying to bite off so much that we can't even chew on it, right? The other thing that worries me a little bit is that, we may not be prioritizing certain projects over others. There are places in Key Biscayne that don't flood. I can go on the north part and it's not flooding over there. Yet we want to now say that we will underground electricity when we do the pipes there. So we would have to wait for all of that to happen in order to put that in. But maybe they're not ready for pipes right now. Maybe that can start in 15 years from now when that becomes closer to an issue in that area. Obviously, there are some areas that we need to take care of today, but there are maybe some sections that we don't need to take care of when it comes to stormwater. You know, I look at the projects in two categories, maybe three categories. We have resilient projects and we have sustainability projects. And the resiliency projects are ones that will affect us in a storm, where overnight we will have a major issue. Whether getting power back on in 5 months from now would be a huge impact on us. Sustainability projects are more of how long can we stay here with the issues that we're dealing with sea level rising, tidal issues. So I think that in my head, I'm splitting these two things up. The things that I have under resiliency is protecting our beach, it's burying our utilities, and it's setting policies so that people can build up high enough to allow water to go under it. Then sustainability, which I think those things are the most urgent that we need to deal with right away. Sustainability, for me, is stormwater drains, dealing with flooding and sea level rise, raising our streets, and what we talked about earlier, seawalls, which is also dealing with tidal, which I think are things that can take a much longer time to develop. Then you also have the current issues like just regular stormwater not working right now, and we know that in spots all over Key Biscayne that need to be taken care of today, like the K through 8 basin. So I think that, you know, I worry about that approach from a couple standpoints, and one of them that worries me the most is financing, funding, and being able to pay for this. So if we're doing all of these projects at one time on top of each other, we need to make sure that we can fund that. And what you're doing is you're phasing these into areas and zones. Okay, we're going to start on zone 1 and we're going to do all the stuff here. And you're going to continue doing these zones. And at some point, you're going to get to a zone and you say, okay, well, we still have to pay off this zone before we can start that zone. And we have to work our way through this. Is it better then to take the approach saying that, hey, power lines, if a huge storm came through here and ripped the power poles out of the ground and it would take 6 months for them to put all this stuff back, should we just focus on that one project right now, try to get all the power lines done, and then focus on stormwater in those areas that need it at this moment? If we can overlap the two at those specific areas, great. If some don't, fine. Get those projects done, have the other ones being designed so that then we're stepping into the next level of what needs to be done and we're moving our way down. That way, as we're financing, we're paying those down, you know, that area down before we're starting other ones up. The way I look at this project is more of a marathon. It's a longer stretch, and I feel that, you know, in some ways, if we do the dig once approach, it almost feels like it's more of a sprint. Like, how can we get this all done in 10 years? I was thinking, you know, raising streets, things like this. I mean, this could be a 30-year process. Yes, we might have to dig up the streets twice, but maybe once you dig it up and the next time it's dug up is 15 years later, 12 years later, whatever it is, it's fine. I mean, people can withstand, you know, happening a couple of times. Maybe then streets are raised at that time. But what I'm afraid, I think that we need to have a discussion. We need to see what we would like to do and then push that over, because I think it's unfair if our manager is running with the ball at 100 miles an hour and we're all like, one person's like, yes, let's go. One of us are like, we're going too fast or slow. One wants to go left, one wants to go right. I think we should have that discussion and kind of try to figure out, maybe we can't do that tonight, but to start to have that discussion to give them, you know, before we get into a huge work order to do everything at the same time to dig once approach, we need to know, is that really what we want to do? And can we even do it financially if this is the way that we're going to decide to go?
Mr. Vasquez.
Just really quick, and this is a very complex issue, and you're bringing up very good points. And I think a lot of things you said is what I think they're really embarking on. It's a long-term, very complex issue. I think it makes sense for us to kind of have, I don't want to call it a workshop, maybe a discussion focused on that, because it is very complex, and you can't, I mean, it's great and it's a noble thought to go ahead and put the electrical first, but while you break in the streets and everything, it makes a lot of sense to take care of the drainage. So we have to kind of validate what we're planning to do, understand what the cost is going to be. And the only way we can do that is if we engage some programmatic component to it, so they can assess what all the ideas are, what staff is proposing and what they're engaging on, and what we all need as a community, and then come up with a plan of action and a focused approach that, as you very well said, can put this jigsaw puzzle together in time. There's just a lot of different issues. I would hate to get bogged down right now in a discussion like that because it's going to take us forever.
Yeah, we're not.
This warrants a workshop. This warrants a discussion at a higher programmatic, so we can all understand the risk that we're getting involved in. That's what I would propose, so we don't.
Okay.
That's what I would propose.
I just have a question. That type of plan, isn't that the work order that we didn't pass last time?
Yes, but we're talking PhD level, and that's what aggravated me.
Okay.
They just, couldn't have that discussion.
In defense of Steve Jacobs, well, why, but I think he's doing the right thing.
He's doing a great job.
Nobody can argue with Dick once. But we're doing it one project, the K8 Basin project.
Yeah.
So by doing that one project, I'm agreeing with you also, Brad. I'm not saying the whole community, but by doing this one project, and if we do it right, we're going to know what it costs, and then we can go forward. We can decide, is this the right thing to do? I think most people, at least our professionals, are saying this is the worst part of the key. And like you said, there's good parts of the key, bad parts of the key. So we'll see how this works, since we all want to do it. And Joe's poor house is so flooded, we got to do it. I mean, if you ever go to Joe's house, he's the worst. So anyway, in all seriousness, if we do this one right, not the way he's proposing, but if we do it right and get it done and pay him, what I'm talking about, not what he's proposing, I'm proposing that we do a design build. He's proposing old-fashioned way. So assuming we do it right with design build, get the first part done, we'll know what we're doing. Yeah. And I'm all for it. Right. And then I'm also, what you guys are saying also, going forward, looking at the whole project for the whole data. That's all.
Yep. I would 100% agree with Ed. The way that I understand it so far is we get to K8 Basin, and that gives us the baseline that we need to move forward. Okay, and the idea of doing this project in zones appeals to me very much. It's very logical because we can switch gears. Okay, if zone 2 isn't the one, then we go to zone 3. I mean, I think that part has a lot of merit and logic. I don't disagree with you. I think we should go ahead and do a workshop. I don't have any problem with that. But I'm thinking this is the K8 Basin is what is going to propel us to move in the right direction. 100% plans by end of the year, right, Mr. Manager? Okay.
Not if you use design build, you don't have to do them. They do it.
No, okay.
We're ready to go.
But okay, 100% plans coming very, very soon. Okay, and from there we're going to have to make some very serious decisions. So, but if you need a workshop to get us that far, I'm good with that. But I think it's been clear to me so far, okay, that we do the K8 and we figure out whether or not that's the right approach. And if it isn't, we go back to, go back to square one and change it. But I feel very confident, like Ed mentioned, that we're going in the right direction right now. And I would agree with you. Yeah, we don't want to, finance X, Y, and Z until we're sure. But certainly, the focus is to get us to understand what those costs are, what the limitations are of the areas that we're going to open up. Where do the pipes all fit in there? Does the telecom all fit in there in the right line? What kind of problems are we going to have with WASA's pipes? All those things are being thought through right now, and I'm pretty sure they're fairly well advanced. And what we need to do is to make sure that we're doing the right thing. But this is the way to proceed. And I think that we probably all agree on that, is that we look at that first zone, and that first zone tells us a lot. And that will tell us a lot about financing. It'll tell us a lot about, where we have to put the stuff. It'll tell us about what kind of engineering we need to do. I think you'll feel very comfortable if we go in that direction.
So I have two questions. So the Black & Veatch contract, the work order that was in front of us, it stated that this was for the Dig Once approach, that they're going to do an island-wide everywhere, how to do everything so that they can phase it so we can be Dig Once. If we're still not 100% sure if we're going to do that, maybe we should just concentrate on the K8, get that done so we can see if we want to do Dig One approach, or maybe we don't, because we still, remember, have places where I don't think stormwater really needs to get upgraded yet, but electrical does. So we're going to have some places where it doesn't really make sense to do both projects at the same time than other projects. So I think that I just want to make sure that, we had a work order in front of us. We need to make sure that, are we looking at the whole island right now? Or are we just testing out one and then going to go to the whole island? And then if we decide to go another way, we now just did this whole work order for a certain type of approach that might not be the approach we're going to use. That's number one. Number two, since we're talking about the K8, and I brought this up to the manager, when we approved the work order for the 30% of the K8, we wanted to make sure that the parameters that we set, we didn't understand how that related to cost. And we said that, during this 30%, that we would have time to understand the costs and make adjustments to those parameters that we set. And those parameters were which model sea level rise we're going to use, what size storm we'll be able to take, how long it would take to get the water to drain, how deep the water would be. We had all these different parameters that we set without understanding cost. So we're here at the 30%. I want to make sure within that same work order that we already approved that they can come to tell us, guys, this is what you're going to be looking at in costs based on those parameters. Do you want to adjust them now? Because we still don't know today that K8 can be $5 million or it could be $100 million. We have no idea what we're talking about. And if it's $100 million, I'm sure all of us are going to say, let's go back to the parameters and start making adjustments, because I can live with water a little bit longer, because this is not going to be feasible to be building this at this level all over the key. So I think we need to now at least do this as a milestone to stop and say, okay, we have 30% before we go to 100%. What are we estimating this cost to be, and should we make these changes in parameters now while we're here, instead of waiting to 100% and then we figure out how much it costs and we have to go back and start over again?
Okay, Mr. Manager, I want this man to sleep well at night, so can you reassure him and let's set up a workshop.
We will set up a workshop. We will definitely do that, and we'll be happy to have that conversation. I do want to, though, go back and the two questions, or the two topics he just brought up. A program manager will do what we want them to do. Whether it's the zone all the way through, whether it's the zone once and split, the program manager is there to do our work. So, what it says in there, that's, you need not worry about that. That's very easy to adjust. 30% design, as I don't know whether we talked about that. I wrote back to you in an email. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We intend to give you a presentation. I think is it coming next month or July 18th, with exactly what you're asking for. With what's in that design, what is the general cost of that design, and then are there some things that we can tweak, left or right, to make some adjustments.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have another one of those meetings tomorrow, right?
8 o'clock if you want to be there.
Yeah, I would suggest that anyone.
It's an update, right?
Yeah.
You want to be what meeting tomorrow?
The resilient. It's some acronym or something.
Synchronization meeting, yeah. It's Resilient Infrastructure Program.
That they meet once a month on 8 a.m. While you're making everyone get up right after council meeting.
Keep going so we can get out of here.
He's going to get us out of here. From last time, athletic program and fields recommendations. You want to talk about that? Sure, and I'll have Todd come up. What I'd like to do is 3 things from the manager report. Mr. Mayor, and Todd will go through this very quickly. The athletic program, I want to make sure you see what we have from the beach park. Colleen will do that. And then also, Jeremy, I think it's very important to get up and talk to you about some of the updates on Rickenbacker Causeway. Okay. So with that, Todd. Those 3 things, and we're done.
Good evening.
Yes.
If you recall, we had a very productive meeting back in February. We obtained extremely valuable input from our stakeholders and residents. Obviously, when your number of participants triple and the number of programs that you run almost double, you're going to have space and time issues. That's what we have in our athletics programs. What you have before you, right there.
Yes.
So. Up there? Okay. So I know you're tight for time, but what you see before you is our approach, operationally, financially, and long and short range planning to improve our athletics programs, management, the facilities, and that's how we'll proceed going forward. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for him? No? Okay, shall we move on to your next item, Mr. Manager? Look at this.
Yes, Madam. If we would, so let's get Colleen up there to do the beach park.
I can't see that.
Where'd the mouse go? Okay. Do you see the mouse?
No, I do not. The short-lived reign.
It's in here.
Todd broke it?
I think it's in here, number 17.
It doesn't even play.
I know. Is this where I say motion to adjourn?
It's happening here. I mean, I can talk about it.
Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties here. The computer's frozen.
Why don't we jump to Jeremy for Rickenbacker Causeway as we work that computer?
Good evening. So I can go ahead and give an update on Rickenbacker. So the Causeway Master Plan, which is our sincere hope, is they take the plan that we did and use that as the core and expand it. So the full extent of their plan goes all the way from village limits to the underline, which is the path adjacent to the M path. So it's quite a bit more scope than what we had provided, and it does include the intersection between the Rickenbacker, 95, everything. So it's a pretty significant scope. The consultant that is on board is Kimley Horn. It's somebody that I've personally worked with them before when I was in private practice. They're competent. They're going to be a good partner, I think. We'll be continuing to stay involved for sure. And that just kicked off. Sorry, I just lost my place. There it is. We also have the ongoing short-term improvements. This includes the movement of the entrance to Hobie Beach. When you're coming southbound off the Rickenbacker, they pushed that entrance back because that was a spot where it was very dangerous because it was very quick after the causeway, which was actually something we identified in our master plan as well. But they did that work, and that is just wrapping up. The Hobie North Island Shore Stabilization. This is a project that you might have noticed kicked off on the 30th last week. They're clearing the site. They're clearing invasive species. This is really important for us, based on what we witnessed on the West Coast, which is the bridge failures are very spectacular when it's a span that collapses, where most of the failures was actually on the low-lying portions between the bridges where islands washed out. And so this is a direct response to that threat. This is going to be, they're going to restore the park, but in the course of doing so, they're going to be adding riprap and stabilizing the shoreline and armoring the shoreline from that kind of threat. And that already kicked off. The Bear Cudge Bridge replacement, the PD&E, which is the original, the planning review and planning and environmental review. I'm actually participating in the selection of the first tier selection of the team to do the work on Thursday. Still have a lot of documents to review for that. And then this all sort of fits in with the overall Army Corps of Engineers program. So obviously we're working with Army Corps Island specific, but they're continuing to do the work with all of Dade County, which was, of course, their original proposal to do the wall in front of Brickell that got a lot of press, not all of it positive. So they're relooking at that. And one of the options they're looking for that is incorporating really Virginia Key as a barrier. So all of a sudden, our master plan, the county's work might be tying into the overall Back Bay study as well. And so we're just going to make sure that those continue to be integrated and everybody's talking to each other, which is a good segue because the last thing I want to update on is the 2 projects that FDOT is proposing regarding connections between 95 and the Rickenbacker. One project is surface streets, which we've been involved with, got some comments in, and is scheduled to kick off with a later project that is, as far as I can tell, seems to be siloed separately, which is the concrete rehabilitation of the flyovers. And if you look, when you drive on those roads, you notice it's very patchwork, it's very rough. In fact, it's to the point where there's almost exposed rebar in places. So there's no question that it needs to be done. Their current proposal, though, shows basically completely closing them off from traffic. At the same time that, again, based on their own website, shows that they would also be doing milling, resurfacing, repainting work on the surface roads, which would presumably be getting a lot more traffic at the same time. So we're doing sort of a coordinated response, county, city, but we're reaching out with FDOT to make sure, look, is this the best option? Is there a way we can maintain traffic on some of those, on some narrower portion of the flyover and phase the reconstruction work? So I've already contacted City of Miami. They expressed very similar concerns, as well as county, and then we'll be working with FDOT directly. So those are long term. Those are scheduled construction 2024, summer 2024, but we need to be on top of it now.
So go ahead.
If I would, just for a little bit of clarification, so just so you understand Bear Cut Bridge, there's actually 2 things going on right now. Jeremy mentioned the PD&E, which is the long-term approach for the replacement. So that's the initial planning, development, environmental study, which will lead into the replacement approximately 8 to 10 years down the road. There is also the 10-year FDOT rehab program project, which should start when, Jeremy? July?
That should be starting in July, might be August. They extended based on some findings that they had after an inspection, but that is expected to be limited, some limited overnight lane closures, but at no point will it be completely closed, and they are saying that that work would be overnight, anything that causes a lane closure.
Yeah, so I have a question, a couple of things. I mean, Bear Cut Bridge, I think, is priority number 1 for Key Biscayne right now. So I'm glad that you guys are on top of this, and the faster we can do it, the better. The causeway, I still feel very uncomfortable of the plan that we put forward, because I had to come back. You know, I go to the office early in the morning, around 6:30 in the morning, and I had to come back for some guy to do a repair, and I came back around 8:15 in the morning into the Key, and I was surprised to see how much traffic was going over the William Powell Bridge. I mean, there's quite a bit of cars. And the proposal that we put forward was 2 lanes going out, but coming back in, when you're coming down that bridge, it's going to go to 1 lane as the pass-through causeway, and 1 lane is going to go off, and it's not like, you know, I think, Jeremy, you were explaining to me as like an express lane, but I think, you know, I started having trouble. Is that an express lane, or is that just, that's the causeway? Because it's not like you're on 95 and you have an express lane and you have another lane just parallel and just gets back on. The lane that you get off goes underneath, goes around a roundabout, it goes through schools, and it comes back under, and it comes back around, and then comes back up. So it's not really, I don't see that people will be like, oh, which one am I going to take? I might just go right. Everybody's going to be trying to get into the left lane, and everybody knows when you go from 2 or 3 lanes down to squeezing into one, everybody's slowing down, traffic's starting to back up. The next wave of people are coming through the tolls, they're starting to back up, and does that trigger now traffic? And why did we put that forward? Why would we not just say we want to maintain the 2-way causeway this way, a 2-lane causeway that way, and have the side roads there? I'm a little bit worried about that 1 lane going back into Key Biscayne, and did we make that right decision? And is there still a chance that we should say, hey, no, we're looking at this, maybe it should be 2 lanes? Now, I know Jeremy said you sat with the engineers and they looked at all the traffic and everything like that, but it's still, it concerns me. I don't know if people are really seeing the real situation out there.
So one significant limitation of our study is we didn't do a comprehensive traffic analysis.
So it may change still.
And any final design is going to be based on numbers. We were expediting the process instead of trying to do a traffic counts on a road we don't manage.
Yeah, but I think the problem.
But yeah, any final product is going to count for.
Yeah.
It's going to be based on counts.
Okay, and I just want to make sure that our message to the county is that, I mean, personally, I'd rather have the 2 lanes than 1 lane. If we're not talking about counts, I don't know why we then would put 1 lane in. We should have started with 2 and let them negotiate it down to 1. So now we're coming with the master plan and we're giving us the less of what it could be. But I don't know if there's still a way to let them know, like, we would rather have 2 lanes if we can.
He's on the master plan.
You're on the table. Okay.
Participate.
I think what's important to say, and I think what the message we were trying to relay at the time is that we care. This is important to us. We can move quick. We're going to get you something.
Right.
We got them a concept. We didn't even put the word plan on the back of it purposely. Nothing's going to be passed, as Jeremy said, and if the traffic study doesn't approach it. So that's the key thing, was to get them something quick, and to make sure that he was on the master plan team.
Perfect.
And so that's exactly where we are.
So we're not tied to our concept.
Master plan.
All right.
But I think a big thing that is important for residents to know is that Jeremy's there.
Yeah.
Like, if you take anything away from this, everyone has said for how long, we need a seat at the table. We need to be included in the conversation.
But all of you would agree that you would rather have 2 lanes rather than 1 lane coming into the key. Yes or no? Let Jeremy know. Like, Jeremy.
Jeremy would rather have 2.
We just want the traffic to move properly.
Yeah.
Would you want 1 lane?
But why would you want 1 when you got 2?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I just want to make sure Jeremy knows that that's where we all stand.
He's got it.
I think we've all told him.
But again, there's 2 different types of traffic, okay? There's a weekend traffic, and then there's a Monday to Friday traffic, okay? So, you got to solve for both, and one may not be compatible with the other one. So, let's work through the process, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
But it's not going to be that simple, obviously, and there's a limited amount of space,
of course,
and roadway there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready for Beach Park? Last thing. So we've talked about this before. We've taken your feedback. We've used the community's feedback. We've actually come up with our final design, and what we've put together. Oh yeah, thanks. There we go. What we've put together for you is our phasing plan based off of the funding that we have right now in the budget that's going to roll over into the next fiscal year 24 based on your approval of it, which is about $919,000. What we can handle with that amount of money is essentially the central area minus the splash pad. The beach pavilion renovation is the most significant piece of that cost. And then that's followed by the restroom, which includes, a whole new building and a storage room and the space for the pool equipment when the splash pad can come online. We've split the development or the build line kind of in the middle of the pavement area because we didn't want to pave that splash pad without being able to put the equipment underneath it, because then we'd have to go back and just rip the pavement up and then put the equipment underneath it. It would be a big waste of money and time. So that blue area, that central area, is what we can do and fairly comfortably with our current budget. And if we end up getting bids back that are lower, we'll reevaluate other elements like adding lighting along the entryway walkway or recreational equipment or fitness equipment on the west side, or I'm sorry, the east side, and then the entry, the entry gate is another piece that we had to cut out of it based off of cost. But if we have the room, then why not? But I just wanted to let you know that this is our course of action. And the timeline is we're gonna start procurement when permitting is done. That procurement timeline is really large because we're waiting on the CCCL permit to come through, and I think a DERM permit as well. Once you pass the 2024 budget, we'll start construction, and we'll have that money being rolled over, so we won't have to split that money into one fiscal year to the next. And phase one, we don't know the exact timeline, but I gave it quite a bit of buffer, April, spring next year. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay.
Do you have a handout for that?
It should be in your pack. No, is it? It's not in your packet?
Yeah, it's in tab 17.
Thank you.
No problem. It's just behind exhibit 3B.
Last one.
Sure.
That's it.
Just after the athletic program recommendation.
Got it, thank you.
Anything for the good of the order? All right, remember I gotta.
Maybe in the room, I think we should certainly adjourn.
I better not go there. I might get in trouble. Again, we want to wish our colleague a very happy birthday and enjoy. Where are you treating us for your birthday?
Wherever you'd like to go.
All right.
I'm usually treating you for my birthday.
Motion to adjourn.
You want to go next?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. We're done.
Everybody want to go? Sailing next week?